1.
Now it's time to rev up the engine. It's the Eurosport Super Racing Weekend.
Yokohama, power of performance.
With lawn comfort, garden furniture.
And I come over, yeah, can't you feel the vibe is right? For us to get it on tonight, stop wasting time. Baby, it's the last chance to get the last thing. And I come over, yeah, can't you feel the vibe is right? For us to get it on tonight, stop wasting time. Baby, it's the last chance to get the last dance. I know
Hello and welcome to the end of term party that is round 10 of the FIA GT Championship. We're at Estoril in Portugal and close on the Atlantic Ocean. The weather, well, very changeable. It's been sweeping in rain showers throughout the weekend, and Sunday has proved no different to Thursday, Friday or Saturday. Well, as ever, we've got a packed programme for you, and we will start our action, of course, with the FIA GTs. But first, let's have a look around this track as we ride with Gabriele Tarquini. Hello, he says, in his native Italian. I'm Gabriele Tarquini here at Estoril, the last round of the European Super Touring Championship. Ride with me on the circuit that will decide the European title. So we start off on the long front straight here at Estoril. It's the quickest part of the circuit and right on the end, doing about 250 kilometers an hour, braking hard to get down into second gear. And Gabriele saying at the end of this fast straight, it dips downhill. Very easy indeed to lock the brakes. Out of the first corner into the fast right. And the first corner's reprofiled, so the approach to the second right-hander is slightly slower, but it's always been a major understeer problem. Second, third, fourth gear through there. In fact, most of the corners here are second gear corners, apart from the last one onto the straight. And then a long, slow corner gives a lot of understeer problems. Again, down to second at the apex and third. And then the right-hander, which is a very similar kind of corner. Third, fourth, fifth here, hardly a curve. It's really just a flat-out kink in fifth. About 210 kilometers an hour in the Honda here. Then the long left-hander, very important to keep the speed up, because that leads on to another straight with a braking opportunity at the end of it. Third, fourth, fifth again, and then slow right-hander. Again, second, third, fourth to get to the right-hander. The slowest part on the circuit, this nasty little uphill mountain hairpin, he says. He doesn't say nasty, I added that in myself. And then out of there, which is a really difficult corner to manage. You have to sacrifice something there, but it's important to come out quickly through the S's and onto the final corner, the long, interminable right-hander that leads you back onto the straight. Very quick, right on the ragged edge the cars are, and very, very important to a fast lap time and to overtaking opportunities at the end of the straight, that one. So there you are, a lap, a fast, furious lap at Estoril with Gabriele Tarquini. It really is busy, busy, busy all the way round. Lots of second gear corners, a first gear hairpin, and that really death-defying last corner out onto the straight, which is so crucial to a fast lap time and so crucial to lining up a pass at the end of the long front stretch. Well, it will undoubtedly produce lots of excitement throughout the remaining races of this Super Racing Weekend. We'll be back after the break. Join myself and David Leslie as we take you to the start of the FIA GT race. Welcome back to Estoril. The FIA GT Championship will come to its conclusion here. Round 10 of the FIA Super, round 11 of the series, round 10 of the Super Racing Weekends. Estoril in Portugal, and this morning dawned bright and sunny, but there was always the threat of clouds coming across the nearby countryside, and a little bit of cloud watching before the start of the race.
The FIA GT Championship in Eurosport's Super Racing Weekend. With lease plan, fleet management in motion. Filatice, stretching fibers, fabrics and yarns.
Yokohama, power of performance.
So welcome back to Estoril, the cloud watching crews looking at the skies as well as the cars on the grid before the start of this last round of the championship. The GT drivers' title already decided by Christophe Bouchou and Jean-Philippe Belloc and the Labra competition team 2 races ago, but the NGT title still up for grabs. Luca Riccitelli leads the point standings alone from the Ferrari drivers, David Thierrien and Christian Pescatore, within 4th place and still with an academic chance of the title. The other Red Bull driver, Dieter Cuesta. So they've been separated in their 2 cars. Riccitelli has the help of Sasha Masson to try and help him win the championship for Porsche against Ferrari. Dieter Cuesta is in the 2nd Red Bull car with young Spaniard Antonio Garcia, and that car starts from pole position, because those of you who saw our Super Pole program will know that Garcia was the only car who had completed a lap when it started to rain, and he was therefore fastest of all, including all the GT cars, and starts on pole. But he has got 6 GT cars alongside and right behind him as they get ready to go, and that means that Clerk of the Course, Roland Brunsterrider, has had to make it very clear indeed to all the GT drivers in the top half dozen places that they may not pass each other or anybody else until they have passed the start-finish line under the start light gantry at the start of the first lap. So that is the rule. There is no passing on the straight until you get past the start line, which could make the start very interesting indeed.
Dieter, there still is a mathematical chance that you could win the title. You're here on pole position with Antonio. What will you try and do at the start of the race? What will Antonio try and do? Will he let the other cars go past, or will you battle straight away with the listers?
I mean, one thing is sure, he will let pass, or he must let pass, the big GT cars. The straight from the starting line to the first right-hander is long enough that they can pass him, but for sure he will not let pass the GTM cars, except Luca.
He will let Luca pass?
I mean, if Luca is very close behind him, I mean, he has to take care for Luca, that's no question.
Thank you, Dieter.
Yeah, difficult balance for Dieter Cuesta this weekend, David Leslie. 4th place in points, outside chance of the title, but wants to win it, but it's his own teammate that could win and stands the best chance of winning it for Porsche. So difficult balance for him and for Antonio Garcia, who's not even in the title hunt, but is starting in front of all these big GT cars, because he has to let them through, but hopefully none of his rivals in his own class. Tricky one.
Very difficult indeed. I think Dieter will be quite happy if he can get to the end of this race. If something was to go wrong with his teammate, then yes, he's got out. His old teammate, Riccitelli, has got an outside chance of picking it up.
Would you be hoping that it rains, or do you want it to stay dry for the race?
For us, it's not so important. We have a good car in the 2 possibility conditions, so for us it's the same. Maybe if it's raining, we have a big chance more to go for one stop. So it's okay, any case.
Thank you, Luca.
Well, Riccitelli, David, perhaps has the advantage here if the weather changes. Because the Ferrari is better on economy, he's got no chance other than to run at the front and hope that the Ferrari, on its tortoise fuel schedule strategy, which normally drops way back, maybe even out of the top 10, possibly might be out of points if the race gets flagged early if Riccitelli is leading. That's his best chance. It does mean that the Ferrari, which normally takes things easy and runs on the fuel schedule, possibly has that actually counting against it as a strategy this year, well, in this final race rather, where it's worked well this year. Let's see what the Ferrari drivers think might happen in this race, because obviously it is to them really that we have to look for a different strategy to try and win this one. And they will be very aware of the weather, the potential for stoppages. Last year's race was stopped after just 24 laps because of the weather, so the Portuguese Ferrari fan club might be out in strength. We'll wait to see what the Ferrari drivers think and see whether they've got anything to wave their flags about.
David, you've been going for the one-stop strategy all year. Is it the same plan here, even if it rains heavily?
Yeah, we want to make only a one-stop strategy, if it's dry or wet, and I think that's the only solution for us to win the race, so and to win the championship. So we're going to try to make only one stop.
Thank you, David.
Well, Terry Han obviously aware that fuel economy is his really strong suit in this car. Perhaps the Ferrari 360 Modena cannot absolutely run at the full pace of the best of the NGT Porsches, which are clearly the Red Bull cars this year. But they know that fuel strategy is very much their long suit, and they've played to it in the last couple of races and been there or thereabouts and picked up the important points they needed to. But as the cars get away, flagged away as ever by Clark of the course, Roland Brunserrider, after the GT drivers, as I said, have had a strict talking to about not passing before the white line. David, rain must be one of the foremost things on everybody's mind.
Yes, everyone has been looking at the sky to see what's happening, and there's a lot of cloud around, so I can't see it staying dry for the whole 3-hour race. Somewhere along the line it's definitely going to rain. It's a case of how much will it rain. We've seen it over the past few days. The rain comes, it only comes for 2 or 3 minutes, stops. 15 minutes later, as we've seen on the Super Pole yesterday, all of a sudden we've got a dry circuit again. So those drivers that are very good or very brave could stay out there on their slick racing tyres during that very short, sharp fall of rain and try and brave it out in order to make up the places that needed, not lose too much time in the pit area.
Well, we suggested that this morning, didn't we, to Jamie Campbell-Walter and Bobby Verden-Rowe, who are second on the grid, and they said, all right, if you're so good at it, you drive the bloody car, we'll sit in the commentary booth. They said, if it's raining at all, we are straight in for wet weather tyres, because the Lister will run in the wet or in the dry, but anywhere in between, they will not survive on slicks. So there you can see the starting lineup, the best 12 cars, 6 from GT, 6 from NGT, go into Super Pole. That decides the top 12 places on the grid in whatever order they were in the end of Super Pole. So it doesn't matter how much quicker or slower Super Pole is than normal qualifying, Super Pole still decides the top 12 places on the grid, which is why we have got an NGT car that set its lap time in dry weather on pole position ahead of the GT and NGT rivals that were stricken and hampered by that little rain shower rather than a storm even that swept through the Super Pole half hour. And further down the grid we see some new additions. In fact, right at the back of the grid we can see Oliver Gavin and Peter Cox, the Dutch driver who will also see in Super Production. They are bringing out in the last race of the season a Lamborghini that we've seen a couple of attempts to enter into the series, which has been driven by a couple of gentleman drivers, and finally the team have got Oliver Gavin and Peter Cox into the car and said, listen guys, please give us some pointers, help us with the setup, let's see what the car can do. And well, what it can do, in actual fact, what it has done in qualifying is produce an awful lot of problems they didn't know they had, because it's running now way beyond the speed it's been driven at previously. And in qualifying, the splitter on the nose fell off, the rear deck fell off, the power steering wasn't working and so on. But Oliver Gavin this morning was saying the team have worked through the night on this car, and it is an absolutely revised machine, so much so that the car that starts last on times on the grid was fastest in the morning warm-up. Gavin starts 35th in the car that was fastest in the morning warm-up. Now that is quite something, and it was fastest by half a second ahead of the Car Sport Holland cars, the Ferraris, the Listers and everything else. So that car suddenly, from being a make-weight with gentleman Pro-Am drivers, looks like it might have some potential as a future GT race winner. Who knows what they'll do in this race. So the cars ready to come to the grid, our usual array of onboard cameras with the Listers, with the Ferrari, and particularly, of course, with Riccatelli and with the Terrian and Christian Pescatori Ferrari in the NGT class. They are coming through the final couple of corners. The lights will go out on the safety car, have got out on the safety car, and the cars now will be preparing to rush to the line. And for Antonio Garcia, pole position in that little Red Bull Porsche, alongside him Jamie Campbell-Walter trying desperately not to overtake before they get to the start-finish line, and Campbell-Walter being monstered from behind by the rest of his GT rivals, the other 5 cars, and down into the first corner. It's going to be very close indeed. Watch what happens with the Lister, but watch behind as well, because there's drama behind, and that is disaster. A real disaster for Riccatelli and the Red Bull cars in the pit lane, in the pit wall as well, or in fact in the barrier that protects the pit exit lane is the Porsche of Philip Pater. Well, David, what a disaster for the 2 Red Bull cars, both with championship contenders in NGT to go out. And did you see the Ferraris going around the back of them behind as well?
Yes, the Ferrari must be laughing all the way around the circuit at this moment in time.
He better be careful not to laugh too hard or he'll fall off.
It was just a terrible start, that. It spread out across the circuit, came in. Unfortunately, the number 11 Belmondo car just had brain fade or whatever, and straight into the Philip Pater car, and then bounced into the back of the 76 Red Bull car, the pole position car, which in turn took out the 77 car. So
dreadful start.
Not a good start for that team.
Not at all. And Jamie Campbell-Walter's under pressure as well, isn't he? That's which one of the 2 Car Sport Holland cars? That's the number 4 machine behind him. That is the father and son Bleekemolen car. Hazeman's in the number 3 car, and starting the number 4 car is Sebastian Bleekemolen. Both young brothers are starting those Car Sport cars, and boy, they've done a good job, haven't they? They've got the Lava car behind. Jamie Campbell-Walter leads, Julian Bailey then the Ferrari, and well, one of the Belmondo Vipers, and they've got Jarry and Lafon's car there as well. So that's Wim Deems in the Belgian GLPK car as they come onto the straight. Campbell-Walter leads them across the line, but the safety car is already out, and that means that for Jamie and for the rest of the field, slowing down, and that's because, of course, Philip Pater's car is barreled into the pit wall, and we'll get a look again, and there you see quite clearly in the replay. Well, Kumpen, gee, I guess, first of all, didn't see Peter alongside him as he tried to jink to the inside for the inside line into the corner, and maybe damaged because of that collision. Anyway, at that stage, it looked like he was completely out of control, didn't he? And tagged Riccatelli into poor old Antonio Garcia, who must have wondered what on earth was happening into the first corner anyway, with the whole of the GT field swarming around him, and absolute disaster. And that all, I'm afraid, because Anthony Kumpen didn't find the hole in traffic that he clearly thought was there. Now, you can see that although both Red Bull cars have disappeared, certainly Philip Pater's car is not going to, unless they bring a flatbed out. Peter is out of the car, and so the Austrian is okay. But, well, lots of work will have to be done on this, because it's not just cosmetic. The front of these Porsches, David, all the vital cooling equipment is all around behind that front bumper.
Yes, they've got lots of oil coolers, radiators in behind there. So there's going to be a lot of work to try and turn that around and repair the damage. We did notice there was some fluid leaking out the bottom of it, so if it's a case that will have to be changed, it won't be able to put in a rod weld and repair it. It'll have to come out and have a new one, so they're going to lose a little bit of time doing the repair on that car.
Well, they will undoubtedly do that, luckily, on lap 1 of the race, so they've got effectively 3 hours to sort it out, get them back out there, and who knows what might happen. Umbrellas up already. I wonder if that's anticipation or whether there is actually rain falling. The cars behind the safety car, and Oliver Gavin coming through 8 or 10 cars from the back of the grid, so he had a good opening lap. Won't make any more places up behind the safety car, obviously, but they will hope to pull the safety car in as soon as possible. And water on the camera lenses around the track, as we've just seen from that last shot, was an indication, I think, that there is water in the air. Well, of course there's water in the air. Now, incidentally, just to explain something to those of you sitting in your armchair who are way ahead of us when we're talking about things, here in our commentary booth in Estoril, we are seeing pictures that were recorded earlier from the start of the race, and they're being broadcast from our headquarters in Paris to you and back to us at the same time. So we're seeing the pictures the same time you're seeing them. However, our voice then has to go back to Paris and is then broadcast on to you. So we are actually probably talking about pictures that you've already identified what's happened and have already left you. So please do forgive us while we're showing you this beginning of the race, because we will be behind the action at the moment. For instance, we're seeing the cars restarting with Jamie Campbell-Walsh again under pressure and smoking them into the first corner. You're probably already seeing them out of turn 2, and we'll know that Ricard Rydell did not get past Julian Bailey in the Ferrari, so we are a little bit behind, and not all of it is just because I'm thick. As you can see there, change, I've forgotten that happened, David, change into the second turn there as the number 4 car gets in front, and that, of course, Sebastian Bleekemolen, his younger brother, 19-20-year-old Jeroen Bleekemolen, also looking to get past the Lister Storm of Jamie Campbell-Walsh. And David, plenty of overtaking opportunities in tricky conditions, particularly on this track, because there are a lot of slow corners, which means hard braking in, slithery power out exits.
Yes, it is. With these cars with so much power, it's very difficult for them in slithery conditions, where it's just starting to drizzle or rain. As you're looking as though it's about to do any second, basically, then yes, they're going to find it very difficult to get tucked into the corner, into the apexes. We've seen there that the Lister went right round the outside of that corner, and now he's gone from first to 4 in a matter of about 4 or 5 corners. So the Lister, we've explained to us, was not very good in these damp conditions, and they really did struggle with it, and that looks to be the case. These Vipers here making headway. The 2 Car Sport Holland cars out front with the Chirac car now in 3rd place.
Now, we were talking about tyres earlier on because of the potential for starting on wets or intermediates as opposed to slicks, but another little tyre story in the GT class is that the Ferrari, which has won 2 of its 3 races in this championship, it's raced 3 times here in the FIA GT Series, won 2 of those on Dunlop tyres. 2 weekends ago, they raced their 2nd car at Petit Le Mans on Michelin's, and here again, running on Michelin tyres for the first time in the FIA Series, and saying, well, why not? There is a tyre allocation that was made by Michelin for the Raffinelli Ferraris, which you'll recall were here earlier in the season, now aren't, and so they are there, and so the ProDrive team have decided to try and use those tyres here as well and get a feel for what they're like in a European environment as well as Road Atlanta, because as we now see Julian Bailey robustly repulsing Ricard Rydell, because the cars are in different specifications in the FIA Series and in the American Le Mans Series, aren't they? Because these cars don't run exactly to the same Le Mans rules, so the ProDrive sort of weighing things up in the balance, and at the moment it looks as though the Michelin shod cars are doing a pretty strong job, but right behind the Belmondo Viper on Dunlops, the Vindames and Jean-Pierre Jarier Vipers right there as well, Dave. We've got a 10-car train here covered by, well, less than 5 seconds. That is got to be the most impressive early season racing, early race that we've seen all season.
It is without doubt. All season long we've had the race starting and they tend to stretch themselves out and get away. Now somehow or another they managed to, with the pace car being out, and with a restart, they're all together, and they're staying together. Nobody is pulling away at all, and it's really good to have these 9 cars, nose to tail, covered by approximately 2 or 3 seconds.
Maybe we need a bit of greasy track all the time. Perhaps we should get artificial waters on a couple of the corners and just slow things down a little bit. But Estoril, for these cars particularly, although it's got this enormously long fast straight they're on now, has also got several second gear corners, second gear in the Super Tourer, so it is definitely second gear in a GT car, and that allows lots of chances to catch your rivals if you're good on the brakes or aggressive on exit speed from the corners and so on. And so it does try and it mixes and matches its corners, Estoril. It's got some brave stuff, it's got some fast straight line stuff, 2 good long straights and several heavy braking corners as well, so it suits various different aspects of most of the cars in the field quite clearly, because we've got the Vipers of various different descriptions and various different specifications. We've got the Listers and the Ferrari in there as well, and all we really needed was for Oliver Gavin's Lamborghini to have had a good qualifying, and he'd be right in there in the mix as well, thoroughly enjoying himself returning to racing in Europe.
But it's great to see such a variety of cars at the front of this grid. It's not a case of any more of one car winning and everybody else having to follow on behind. These cars are all up there, all fighting, and if you see them right behind, one behind each other, a big long stream there coming down into that left-hander. Absolutely fantastic, and I can see it carrying on like this. The weather's still very changeable, still very variable, and we're just not very sure exactly what's going to happen with it. The clouds look as though they're sort of coming in and getting darker, so we'll have to wait and see whether the rain comes and how much of it will arrive, or whether it'll just be like the days we've had so far, Friday and Saturday, where we have quick little showers and disappear, or maybe it'll be like last year where it'll come down and rain very, very hard.
No, let's hope not, because we've got a good race going now, and although things have taken a bit of a sour turn for the 2 Red Bull cars, the RWS Motorsport machines in the NGT category, Certainly Christian Pescatore and David Terrian's Ferrari here just been passed. There is the Oliver Gavin Lamborghini, and nice exit as well. No sideways stepping out there from the Lamborghini out of that slick hairpin, so they've clearly got that one hooked up. The Ferrari, although it's passed its rivals, it's not actually in a point scoring position, because points here are, as in Formula 1, only 6 top drivers, so 10 down to 1 for the top 6, and at the moment it's 9th or 10th in NGT. So the Ferrari, although it seems to be okay and hasn't certainly had any damage or any delays, unlike the 2 Red Bull cars, isn't scoring any points at the moment either. And don't forget, the Ferrari drivers are behind Riccatelli, so if they don't finish the race or don't score any points, it doesn't matter what happens to Riccatelli. It only matters what happens to Riccatelli if the Ferrari drivers win the race. Then they have to worry about what Riccatelli is doing. So at the moment, Ferrari is not winning the championship, and the Red Bull Porsche that has been in the pits having its radiators fixed is winning the championship, which is kind of a bizarre situation, as the Ferrari of Ricard Rydell again makes inroads into the list as ahead of him, and again repulsed fairly brusquely there. I think they're really enjoying themselves, actually. I bet Ricard has got a smile on him a mile wide as he's chasing those listers. And again, still wet on the camera lens. It's not getting any drier there. Bouchou really trying everything through these swerving S's. Oh, here it comes, Bouchou. Well, again, we're seeing it slightly behind you, or we're talking about it slightly behind you, seeing it, I'm afraid, by the time our words get to you. Bouchou through, and the damage as he comes past the pits for Sebastian Bleekemolen, the splitter hanging off the back of the car, the rear under tray hanging away at the back, and that will undoubtedly give them problems. He's already lost a couple of places, as you see there in replay, and well, certainly nothing Bouchou could do really to avoid that one, David Leslie. Bleekemolen, having been passed, just having another shot down the inside, typical young driver move, really.
Yeah, he made the dive for the inside, went in just a little bit too quick, couldn't get it stopped. Bouchou was very quick in noticing that he wasn't going to get it stopped, and managed to back out of it with Bleekemolen coming across in front of him, and only managed to come across the back, just catching the back of the car. But had he not had his wits with him, he would have been taken out by the number 4 car, Holland car, quite badly.
Well, so would the rest of the GT cars, actually. They're all so close together. If those two had spun in front, they would have collected the second car, sport car, both the Listers and the Ferrari, and who knows what else behind. There would have been absolute carnage in the front, because, again, as we make the point, we have got 10, 11, 12 cars here, nearly, which is the huge percentage of the GT field, all running together, and the poor Paco Orti Porsche there trying to stay well out of the way as this huge train of big engine cars comes tearing past him and onto the straight. And Bouchou, the leader, and I'm not sure I would have predicted that, actually, at the start of the race, that Bouchou would have been working his way up to the front, although we've seen him from pole before drive away from the field. Certainly the Labre car is very quick in the early going, but it does pay the penalty later on, as we saw oh so graphically in Jarama, with the car running out of tyres and sliding off the road on the last lap to lose third place. A third place it was really tentatively hanging on to when the Dunlop shod Ferrari won and the 2 Belmondo cars were second and third. So they're safely past the Paco Orti car, leaders into turn 1, the GT cars following through. And look further back, a big stretch back then to the next group of cars. And David, I'm worried a little bit about the Labre car. I think I've seen a couple of little puffs of smoke from the back of that car.
Yeah, it certainly looked as though there was something wrong with it. We're not quite sure what it is at the moment, whether it's just locking a brake up and he's trying very, very hard, or whether actually an engine problem. I must admit, it looks as though it's from the rear of the car rather than from the tyres. So we'll just have to watch that one closely for the next half hour or so and see exactly what happens to it. But on board here with the Ferrari, and we can see him now just following around, and he really doesn't want to make any mistakes. He's got his system worked out for the race. It is to take it nice and easy, look after the fuel consumption, and get to the end of the race with just a 1 pit stop. Now, that has worked superbly well for him throughout the whole season, and managed to win a number of races with it. So at the moment he's just sitting in there behind and trying not to get involved with Norgarten, who's in that car in front. Norgarten, very experienced driver, so the Ferrari, I'm sure, will think, I'll just sit here and wait and see what happens, because they've got to get to the finish to try and win this championship, and they've got to really finish in the top 5. Finishing 6th will give them 1 point, and 1 point will put them equal with Riccitelli, who's currently still sitting in the pits. So last time we've seen the car was in the pits, still trying to get it fixed. On the system they have when there's a draw, the recall like that, is they then count who has the most number of wins. On that basis, the Ferrari will go on to win the championship, having a greater number of wins in the NGT class. So a 6th will give him the championship, but only on count-back, basically, whereas anything higher than that will giving it on his own right with the maximum number of points.
So an awful lot of mental arithmetic and agility for the Ferrari team to do. I'm sure most of it will be done on the pit wall rather than by the drivers themselves. They do know what they've got to do. They're certainly no fools. But it's not just on economy that they've won races. Remember, at Silverstone they won on outright speed. They won the same at Hungary on outright pace. And in fact, there's a third 360 Modena here this weekend. You may see glimpses later in the race of car 99. So we've got 62, 63 and identically liveried 99, just perhaps to hopefully, well, who knows, at the end of the race may be in a position to be in front of the Riccitelli car and take some points away from him. You know, everything happens in motor racing, and you can never count out any opportunity. But as you said, there's absolutely no point at all to be passing Michel Neugarten at the moment, although Therian's still only 8th in the NGT class and not scoring points. He does need to make sure that he's not going further back. He needs to make sure he's going forward. But as you can see from the onboard shots of the Ferrari, it's still looking like it's going to get wetter. And the 77 car now has lost 9 laps in the pits and will probably rejoin in another lap or so. Riccitelli in the car and resolute as the team work on it. He never even got out. He's making sure that he's ready to go the very instant that they have finished working on it. And it looks as though he will be 10 laps down when he rejoins. And away he goes, the car nicely fixed, and David looking very good indeed at the front, despite that heavy impact, so they've done a great job in 10 laps.
Yes, they've been very quick in turning that car around, getting new parts onto it. We did see earlier a shot of some pipes sticking into the engine compartment. That's a little heating system they have to try and make sure the oil is nice and warm. It's no good having come in and parted up for 20 minutes while you do the repairs at the front, then go out with cold oil and water, because that'll just damage the engine. So they've thought about it very professionally indeed, and here they are pushing it out onto the pit lane and getting out. A bit of tape on the front there to tape the headlight up that was broken, but it looks like they've replaced the bumper along with the radiators and bits and pieces behind. Very well organised.
So out on lap 12 then, having completed 2 laps, so he's 10 down to the NGT leader, and indeed 10 down to the Ferrari, but the outright leader still Christophe Bouchou, and Bouchou we're used to seeing driving away into the middle distance. None of that this weekend, even though he's starting to lose success ballast because he hasn't won that recently. In fact, the car with maximum ballast with the full 100 kilos is the Ferrari, and I think we're starting to see that perhaps, but also, David, different airbox configuration on the Ferrari this weekend. They told us at Jarama that they were running a new restrictor in Jarama, but with their old long-style airbox that they can tune to the length they want. This year they're running with this weekend they're running with a 2002 spec controlled size airbox, aren't they?
Yes, what happened early on, they had the airbox they designed with the inlets that they wanted. Unfortunately, the officials of the championship decided that wasn't quite within the spirit of the rules and said, we don't like that very much. So twice they had the size of their air restrictor reduced because of it. So having come to a compromise now and clarified the regulation as to exactly what it should be, they've changed the whole airbox to make it smaller, and the actual inlets, which were sticking out at the bottom front of the car where the highest pressure is to get the most air into them, have now been moved back up within the engine compartment. The rules have been clarified too. The inlets must be no more than 600mm in front of the engine, and no more than 1 metre apart wide from each other. So all that has now brought them in line with everybody else in the championship, and Ferrari are calling that, or ProDriver are calling that, their 2002 regulation airbox. Having done that, they've now been allowed to go back up the 2 sizes in air restrictor that they were originally taken down because the officials didn't like the way they had done it and thought that they'd actually done it differently to the way the French had read the rules.
Well, seeing Oliver Gavin in traffic with the Lamborghini, and Gavin hauling his way up the order ferociously, just into the top 11 now as he starts from 35th on the grid. But the car's now starting to come into the pits because rain is starting to fall out around the back of the circuit. So, as Oliver Gavin motors on, for how much longer? Pit stops already happening. And we're just over a dozen laps in, and don't forget last year's race, they stopped the race after some 24 laps rather, because of rain. Tim Sugden's car in the pits, and an engine failure is what put that one out. So Sugden and Steve O'Rourke, ironically with the spare engine sitting in the back of the garage, out, even though there are still some 2 hours and 40 minutes of the race left, because that's just not enough time to change the engine. So the race leaders continue to circulate at speed. And there you can see the Ferrari in 5th place, Boris de Richebourg still hanging in there in 6th. It is starting to stretch out a little bit now. Rickamoen, Jerry 18th, Josselin, Oliver Gavin in 11th place, Stefan Ortelli, the NGT leader, who we just saw him passing, under braking in 12th spot. And the spectators with their umbrellas up, more spots of rain now. A couple of the tail-enders in the NGT cars have decided to make a very early call. I think at the moment they saw more spots, and I think it is now time for everybody to come in, because unless that's an engine blow-up, there is a new leader, as wheel spinning his way in a style that Jean Alesi would be proud of out of a spin is Christophe Bouchou. And there is the new leader. So we have the listers in 2nd and 3rd, and the Carsport Holland car with Jeroen Bleekemolen in leading that race. So we'll be back with more action from Estoril in just a moment, and hopefully it might make a little more sense to you. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to Estoril, and as we saw a dramatic opening to the race with all sorts of action and drama, and finally the heavens did open. Started with light rain, light drizzle. The GT cars came in to take wet weather tyres on, and as they had done so, and the NGT cars were gradually starting to come in, then it was full deluge, well, not a full deluge, but heavy and consistent rain. Safety car came out, and they ran behind the safety car for some 25, nearly 30 minutes, which has put a very, very long first stint on the car, second stint on the cars. Now we pick up the pictures live, and it is just about, in fact, I think, to start raining again, David Leslie. Can't see the sea over there anymore, and the clouds coming back once more. Bobby Verdon Rowe has taken over the lead. Number 1, Lister Storm from Jamie Campbell-Walter. He leads from Michael Bleekemolen. 3rd, Ricard Rydell in the Ferrari. Jean-Philippe Belloc in the Lambrou Viper in 4th. Julian Bailey in 5th has just taken back the number 2 car from Nicholas Springer. And Peter Cox in 6th place. Peter Cox, how's he in there if Ricard Rydell's in the Ferrari? Well, he's not in the Ferrari this weekend. He's in the Lamborghini that started in 35th place, and that is now in 5th position. So they are having some kind of a race. I don't know if anybody's got boring statistics about the furthest climb from the back of the grid to the front in the GT Championship, but I think the Lambo is about to rewrite those.
David, you're 2nd at the moment. It's looking good for the championship for you. You started in 20th place. Maybe that was good because you weren't involved in the crash at the start. Did you see the crash?
In fact, I only saw 3 cars on the wall in the inside of the corner, and I was on the inside, so I had to brake very hard to go across the car and to go on the outside of the corner. But I lost 2 or 3 places, but in fact it was okay for us because Richie was involved in the crash, and that's good for us at the moment. That's good.
There's only just over 30 minutes to go. Will you have to have another stop?
It depends on the weather, because we're okay with the fuel consumption. We won't have to stop again, but we have mixed tires, so if it carry on raining like it is now, it's good for us because we won't have to stop again. But if the track becomes dry, we'll have to put on
as he was talking about tyre choice, you saw intermediates and fairly high grooved intermediates going on in place of the slicks that Jamie Campbell-Walter had put onto the car when he took over from Bobby Verden-Rowe. And that's because, David, it is starting to drizzle again, so it's seesawed backwards and forwards this race. Incidentally, after all that action early on, as soon as the rain arrived and everybody got onto the wet weather tyres behind the safety car, it really settled down. The middle hour of the race, well, I would never want to say that a race in wet conditions with sports cars was boring, but it was certainly fairly static, not the drama that we'd seen early on. Unless, of course, you want to talk about Oliver Gavin and Peter Cox, and I think we certainly will be by the end of the race, in 5th place at the moment from 35th on the grid. Still the Labra competition Viper, the sole healthy car Sport Holland car, and the 2 Lister Storms to dice with. They have got ahead of one of the Lister Storms, but here you can see the battle, as I'm afraid we have lost our timing and scoring monitor. Oh, it's back again. This is for 2nd place, or at least Bleekemolen in the Car Sport Holland car is in 2nd place, and the Belmondo Viper, Boris de Richebourg, the number 12 car, I think that is, with the pink bits on, I think that's the 12 car. He was going very well early on, actually, but he's in 8th place, and I think trying to unlap himself. So the Bleekemolen car here is in 3rd place, and that is the car that was started by Jeroen. His father Michael took over halfway through, and it's very hard to tell when both drivers are called Bleekemolen and they don't put initials on the timing screens, but I think Jeroen has probably made his, or Michael's made his the second pit stop for the car. I think Jeroen is probably back at the helm. Anyway, at the moment, 72 laps in, 30 minutes to go. We have Lister from Car Sport Viper, from Labra Viper, from Lamborghini, from Ferrari, from Lister. There is the top 6, and Perrier leads in NGT. Welcome back to Estoril for the last Eurosport Super Racing Weekend, and oh, I've got a bit of a scrap of paper in my pocket. Let me just rummage. For those of you who are wondering if it's happening again next year and what's happening next year, it certainly should be. Here we see making its 4th stop, Ricard Rydell and Alan Menu's Prodrive Ferrari, and David, damage to the front end, whether that was caused possibly by a blue Porsche that we saw in the gravel traps, contact there or contact somewhere else, not sure. That's their 4th stop, so an unscheduled stop for them. They came in 5th spot. They're now 2 laps down off the lead lap, or 2 laps off the lead lap in 8th position, and so that is dropping down the order. And now look at that. Car 19, Peter Cox and Oliver Gavin in the Lamborghini, 4th place. Is this going to be a podium? It's 30 minutes to go. We shouldn't go there, but from 35th on the grid, a podium finish would be quite something for them to aim for. Long stop for the Ferrari, and this is really yeah, it's a little bit of damage on the front there, but Howard Chapman down there.
Oh, now. We can see it.
On the bottom left
hit
corner.
or caught something, and whatever it is they've caught, they've done a fair bit of damage, and they're struggling very hard to try and get it repaired. Whatever is in behind there has obviously given a great deal of concern. They haven't even managed to get the tyres back onto it. They're thinking about it. There goes on some wets. They've decided it's now time to put wets on rather than anything else. But it looks like they've decided to leave that front alone and not do a great deal more to it, hoping that the scrutineers and the officials will accept the damage that's on it and think that it's okay and not cause too much damage. Obviously there's been even more damage to the rear because it's now gone out without a boot lid on it. Why the boot lid is missing, I'm not 100% sure. But
well, when they started testing the car, actually, the low pressure area at the back ripped the boot lid off a couple of times. So that's not necessarily entirely fixed. Now, I'm afraid we're having an awful lot of flapping about from Paris. We can see live pictures here in Estoril. We can also see on our monitor of what we're being broadcast that we have got pictures on board with Christian Pescatori, who is 2nd place in the NGT class. But we seem to be having problems with water in the electric somewhere here on site in our OB van, although the director does seem to be able to switch between pictures pretty much at will. And I'm afraid it looks as though we may not be able technically to bring you the end of the GT race, which is going to be a darn shame. What we have already in the can, though, is the first Euro Super Touring race of the afternoon. The title there still to be decided as well. So while the headless chickens flap around in Paris and try and decide what on earth they're going to do, we will continue talking blithely until something happens at this end. Now we have a new race leader because making its it's made its 3rd pit stop. Jamie Campbell-Walter in the Lister Storm that was leading is in 2nd place. Sebastian Bleekemolen, Jeroen Bleekemolen rather, is leading the race, still for the Carsport Holland team with some 26 minutes to go. Jean-Philippe Belloc in third. In fourth place, that's the Labra Viper. In fourth place is the Lamborghini. Fifth place is the second Carsport car. In sixth place is the second Lister Storm. I didn't get down into NGT. Thierry Perrier leads that. The car he shares with Michel Neugarten, but Christian Pescatori, David Therian's Ferrari is in second. Third is Patrice Goussalard's Porsche. Fourth, Nigel Smith's Porsche. Fifth in the class, sixth in the class, seventh in the class, eighth, ninth, eighth in the class is Garcia, out of the points then in the car that he shares with Austrian driver whose name escapes me, fourth in the NGT points. David will be...
that'll be Dieter Quester.
Dieter Quester. So certainly out of the top 10 in NGT, and 4 at least away from the points then is Luca Riccitelli's Red Bull Porsche. And if I dare switch on the timing screen, I can see that he is the 12th in the NGT class. Tyres ready for, well, any eventualities. I think we're going to turn into a hectic weather-chasing scramble at the end of this race. Incidentally, the Carsport Holland car, the Belloc Labra Viper and the Lamborghini, first, third and fourth, all still need one more fuel stop before the end. So anything could yet happen. Welcome back to Eurosport, welcome back to Estoril, and having technical problems here on site apparently, so although we can still see pictures of the race here, of the GT race that's continuing in progress, I'm afraid somehow we can't get them to you. So we'll be showing you now the highlights of the first race in the Euro STC. And David Leslie, championship up for grabs here, and the point situation is fairly clear. Fabrizio Giovanardi, the #1 Alpha driver, the reigning champion, who won, despite your best efforts, for Honda last year at the final race of last year's Euro STC. He leads the points, and he leads by how many? Oh, I haven't turned your mic on. By 13, 16 from, yeah.
16 points.
16 from it. It's starting to get a little bit wild in here. 16 points from Gabriele Tarquini and Nicola Larini, who are in a Honda and Alfa Romeo, respectively. Okay, so let's tell you what the teams are doing to try and help their drivers. Honda drafted in last time James Thompson to try and help Gabriele Tarquini at Jarama. Thompson and the regular second driver Fabrice Valfish in the 2 other Honda Accords supporting Gabriele Tarquini. Nord Auto Alfa Romeo. Last time in Jarama they drafted in Felipe Massa, the Formula 3000 European champion, who is now also got himself a Formula 1 drive. He was very good indeed, very impressive in terms of speed, and he has been joined this weekend in the #3 car by the man who has pole, Ivan Muller, ex-British touring car, ex-German touring car, ex-ice racing, well, continuing ice racing driver. So now Muller has taken the drive that's normally Romana Bernardoni. She's been moved over into super production to help the Nord Auto team develop Alphas 147, but chiefly to get her out of the way to put a fast driver in. And Muller has proved not only to be a fast learner, having only done 10 laps in the rain before he came here in to this track that he has not ever raced on, I don't think, and put the car on pole. So he's on pole, Tarquini alongside. Row 2 of the grid is Giovanardi and Larini, who have been long-time championship leaders. Larini is now tied with Tarquini. Row 3 of the grid, we have James Thompson in the second, and basically only really support Honda, because I don't think Fabrice Valfish is going to be able to cut it here, although Felipe Massa is on that row as well. So Larini, second place on the grid, nearly where he wants to be, but with 1 Alfa in front and 3 right behind him. It's going to be tough.
He's going to be a very hard time indeed. He really is out there on his own, just surrounded by Alfa Romeos. But Gabriele is a fighter, we know that. We've watched him many years in Britain in the British Touring Car Championship. He hasn't given up. He unfortunately had lost a few races at the very beginning of the season, which put him a long way behind. And he has fought very hard the second half of the season, scoring many more points than anybody else. But unfortunately trying to clamber back that number of points he lost by having 3 non-finishes in the first 3 meetings, then it's made life very difficult for him. Giovanardi, on the other hand, because of the way the points work, getting 40 for first, 35 for second, 32 for third, and 30 for fourth, and so on down like that. You're getting an awful lot of points for even just a finish. Therefore, you know, Giovanardi simply has to keep on going and just finishing, and if he can keep good finishes, then he will win the championship without having to do too much and actually winning a race. Tarquini, on the other hand, really does need to win these races. Now then, what he didn't expect was to have Muller in the Alfa Romeo. We can see sitting on pole position. I'm not sure why, but pole position is actually on the wrong side of the circuit, because the first corner turns right, but he's sitting on the left-hand side of the circuit. Admittedly, it looks like the drier line because the circuit isn't 100% dry at the moment, but even so, I would have thought the rules and regulations would have had a pole position like every other circuit in the country or in the world on the right-hand side, or going into the first corner on the inside, shall
I wonder if they gave him a choice. I wonder if he thought, I'll take the dry line, because maybe when they offered him the choice, it was considerably wetter. Anyway, away they go. Muller on pole, Tarquini alongside. Makes a good start, despite that being on the damp side of the circuit. But we've seen that the Honda is not the outright speed machine that it was last time at Jarama. It looks as though the Alphas, as well as being darn strong, as the two Hondas of Thompson and Valfish get eased out on the outside by Felipe Massa and are held up. Tarquini is in second with, I think, Giovanardi and Larini in that order. One of the Conrero cars is backwards. That's the number 9 car of Lancialotti. No, can't remember. One of the Conrero Alps, anyway, is irrelevant, doesn't matter. But Tarquini in second place and making early inroads into Ivan Muller, desperate to try and pass him on this first lap as Matt Neal goes through. He's been edged away a couple of places away from the grid as well. He's a little bit further down than he'd like to be in the Nissan, but Tarquini trying to pass. Now let's see if he can get him down into this corner. He's coming down the inside of Ivan Muller. And oh, it's very close indeed. Tarquini, David, is desperate to make that early move.
It would help tremendously if he can get to the front. If he gets to the front, he controls the race. At this moment in time, he's really boxed in with his Alfa Romeos, and that's the position he certainly didn't want to be in. That was the reason of having some other people to help him. But as you can see in the back of the picture, one of those Hondas was disappearing off across the grass, and we believe that one to be Fabrice Valfish.
Yeah, Valfish battling with one of the two Swedish-driven Volvos that have joined the series this weekend. The Swedish Championship is over, and that was Jens Erdmann in his Volvo. They're both going up the hill, down the hill, I can't remember, on the grass anyway, on the outside out of that Michael Schumacher turn. I particularly remember it as the one where he sold Damon Hill a dummy in a Grand Prix several years ago, sailed down the inside and then cleared off to win, much to Hill's disappointment and chagrin. But at the end of lap 1 then, it is Ivan Muller stretching his legs a little on the straight, where at the end the Honda will be back with him, I think. But in third and fourth places, Giovanardi and Larini. So Giovanardi, Larini and Tarquini, second, third and fourth, very close indeed. But as you said, David, in the point scoring, very little difference between first, second, third, fourth, fifth. I mean, the points go down to 20th place or something, so there's an awful lot of points to be scored, but not too many difference between finishing, say, fourth and fifth, or third and fifth, or something like that. So at the moment, Ivan Muller defending very well indeed, and he's certainly right in the middle. He's top gear, Ted line, right through the middle of all the corners to guard the inside and the outside. Tarquini being a little bit more extravagant with the cornering lines, but of course he does have the added problem of Giovanardi right behind him in third spot, because if Tarquini really commits himself to a move and it doesn't quite happen, boom, bye-bye Giovanardi, and then probably Larini will zoom by him in one fell swoop. So Tarquini will have to be very tactical, as we know he can be, and he must surely be ruining those two clashes at the opening two races that cost him one finish in both of those opening meetings of the season.
I think it was that Italian temperament at the very beginning of the season that has put him in this position now where he is, where he's fighting desperately to try and get the lead and score the maximum points, to try and pull back those points he lost at the beginning to Giovanardi. The Italians in the Alfa Romeo was just going out there and scoring constantly right from the word go, right from the very beginning of the season. But unfortunately, Tarquini looks as though he's well boxed in here. He's got Giovanardi right behind him. On that basis, second place is 35 points, and third place will be 32 points. There's only 3 points of difference. Remembering he's got 16 points to catch up in order to try and win the championship as Gabriele Tarquini. So to score only 3 more where they are on only this second lap of the race, then he needs slightly more than that.
And James Thompson, as you can see now, behind Felipe Massa, and that pair of cars dropping away from this lead quartet. So James unable now, possibly as a result of a little touch or two in the first corner. I mean, these cars are not built like brick outhouses generally. Even the Alphas and well, the Audis are all right, fair enough, but the Alphas and the Hondas are really speed machines, and perhaps just a tiny little suspension derangement, just a tap on the wheel or something that's not the toe or the track out, might be enough to drop him off the back. Whatever, he's not going to be able to get in there, mix it with Giovinazzi and Larini and take even 1 or 2 points off them. Unless something happens. Tarquini here again on his own, battling with the Alphas, and as you say, a couple of points here or there is not enough. He doesn't have to necessarily win, he does have to try and pull out a big advantage over Giovinazzi and Larini, and right now that looks a little bit tough. Well, on the email, James O'Donoghue, among many other people actually, wants to know, David, as this is the last hurrah this weekend of Super Touring, what on earth is happening? We've got Super Touring and Super Production, all sorts of manufacturers angling for various different either Super Production rules or Super Touring rules or the Euro Super 2000 regulation package that was thought up, and all sorts of different combinations, and in short, we don't know, do we? Everybody's got a different story, but by next week, by this time, if only we were here this time next week, we might be able to tell everybody.
Well, what's happened basically is the Super 2000 rules have been accepted by the FIA and agreed, but unfortunately there's still a bit of a split in some of the manufacturers. So what they're trying to do now is bring those manufacturers together, so there will be a bit of dilution of the Super 2000 rules to try and make it a little bit cheaper and make life a little bit easier. So they're trying to find a little bit of middle ground to bring the Super Production and Super Touring cars closer together in order to have only one race instead of 2 races and having a very big grid. But during this following week, meetings on 4 out of 5 days, so as you say, next week we'll know the answers.
We should do. We'll know what happens in this race in just a minute. Back at Estoril, the Super Touring race continues, and in second place, Gabriele Tarquini. Well, a lot of work to do. We were talking a moment or two earlier about the changes to the regulations, which almost all the manufacturers seem to want, because we're losing Super Touring as this 2-litre concept at the end of this season, effectively after the final race here in Estoril, although it may still continue as the choice in some of the smaller national categories. British Touring Car Championship have got a sort of semi-Super Touring kind of slightly a bit Super Production set of rules, and there are various other championships in Europe that have various other denominations of rules. Everybody, the manufacturers who are involved, who might become involved, or who have been involved in the past, and are sort of maybe like Honda looking to a model that's coming in a couple of years about becoming re-involved, all have got a little iron in the fire, and they've all got a little bit of work to do with regard to that. And as David Leslie was saying, in the next week after Estoril, there are 4 days solid of FIA manufacturers, committees and meetings of one sort or another, culminating hopefully in Friday when the Touring Car Committee meets, the FIA Touring Car Committee chaired by Jonathan Ashman. When that meets, hopefully there will be, from the Technical Proposals Group, a proposal ratified by the manufacturers and therefore decided at the end of the week. But we will have to wait and see. However, David, you have to say, some people have been saying, Super Production, 12 cars on the grid here from 5 different manufacturers, covered by less than 0.6 of a second. Do you actually need to mess with the formula?
It depends what you think. It is actually very close, it is working very well. But at the moment in time, we've got this race, Super Touring race on here, and Gabriele is trying ever so hard. We're now on the last lap, and what we haven't seen, what we haven't noticed, although we know about, is the 2 other Hondas, the Valfish car and the Thompson car, have been in the pits to have a little bit of work done on them, and they've now gone back out 2 laps down, as has this red car we see in front at the moment, the Matt Neal Nissan. So all those 3 cars are last in this race at the moment, which with the rules we have over here in the European Touring Car Championship, if you are last in the first race, you will start in pole position for the second race. Honda, I think, having a tactical move here, and oh, that was a bit more than a tactical move. That was Gabriele being a little bit forceful, thinking if I give him a little bit of a knock, he might knock him wide enough for me to get past, but obviously not. Muller obviously used to that in the British Touring cars and able to hang on, but what we did see there was a very big dent in the front of the Honda. So coming around the very last corner now, there's a big dent in the front of the Honda. Now, while this race was earlier this morning, and there's lots of time between then and the second race, there is only 15 minutes to work on the cars. The cars are kept in park firmly, you're not allowed to work on them, not allowed to touch them. So all that damage to the front of Gabriele's car that we've seen a minute ago, they've only got 15 minutes in which to repair it. Now that could cause them one or two problems.
Certainly could, because high speed here on the straight does demand good aerodynamics. Monica Sips, though, in the green jacket, who is the Nord Auto team boss, delighted with that. Ivan Muller wins. Not so much delighted that it's Muller that wins, although it's always nice to have a race for a win for an Alfa Romeo driver, but delighted that he managed to hold off Gabriele, and so Gabriele does not get 40 points and close up even more on Fabrizio Giovanardi, who was third, and pull away even more from Nicola Larini, who was fourth, but that they have limited the damage a little bit. And there is damage on the front of Tarquini's car, and David, although the bonnet was knocked down there by that impact, not entirely sure it will have done any cooling system damage, but I mean, you've driven those cars. Could it have an effect in the long term in the final race? Bearing in mind they're starting at the back and in a lot of traffic for a lot of the race.
I think that the damage would be superficial there at the moment. The radiators are much lower down, so it's not a case of damaged radiators, etc. But you need to have the car intact for the second race. And if you have a little bit of door banging, you don't want something that can come loose very quickly. And if you've got damage after the first race, then it depends how securely you can fix that in that 15 minutes to make sure that if you have some damage the second race, all of a sudden the bonnet doesn't fly up and hit the windscreen or anything stupid like that. So it'll just be as much hard work as possible to get that going. So then we see the result. Ivan Muller first, Gabriele Tarquini second, Giovanardi hanging on in third place to restrict the amount of damage done. Another two Alphas coming up, Larini and Massa, Philippe Massa in fifth place, with Colgiaggio in sixth because of the demise of the Hondas having been brought into the pits.
But bizarre that Colgiaggio's not fifth. Why on earth, especially having seen, because they brought the Eurosport Honda pair in on lap 8 or something of a 12-lap race. The Nord Auto people cannot have failed to have seen that. They're just beside them, not exactly beside them, but only 4 or 5 garages away. Why on earth did they leave Felipe Massa out there? He would have been much better off at the front, battling with the two Hondas that are starting on the front row, than starting right in front of Larini and Tarquini and potentially actually being a problem for them to get by.
Well, what Honda have done have been very good. I mean, they realise that they have very much an uphill struggle to try and win this championship, so they've taken their two cars out of the first race. They will start on the front row of the second race. They will be able to control that, so when the Alphas get through to the front, they've then come across two Hondas, and I think they'll find it very difficult to pass those two cars. In the meantime, allowing Gabriele as much time as possible to get up there. If Gabriele gets there first, of course, he will be let straight through, and then you'll have this roadblock right behind him to keep back the Alphas as much as possible.
Yeah, they won't be in line of stern, they'll be side by side. They'll take the door handles together, won't they? They shall not pass, and that's obviously what Gabriele needs to do. But the way that the points are now, Gabriele Tarquini second place, and he's 13 now behind Fabrizio Giovanardi. So Giovanardi, who starts behind him on the grid, must finish 5th or better to win this championship if Tarquini wins. So it's not all done.
Yvon, it certainly seems as though you've done the job that Alfa have brought you in for.
Yeah, it's good because I finished in front of Gabriele, so he couldn't win, so a bit less points. He's not finished. I think the team has won the mark, the championship. Yeah, but we'll be exciting for the second race.
Thank you, Yvon.
Thank you.
Well, before we go to break, let me tell you that the FIA GT race, I'm afraid, is now 3 minutes and 20 seconds away from its 3-hour finishing point. Sebastian Bleekemolen's car in first place, Jeroen Bleekemolen's car rather, in first place. Jamie Campbell-Walters Lister in second. The Bouchou Labra Viper in third place. The Gavin and Cox Lamborghini is in fourth. The second car, Sport Holland car, is in fifth. And the NGT winner, Thierry Perrier, will be in sixth place. Back live at Estoril for the last 2 minutes of the FIA GT race. You have my sincerest apologies for our technical problems here on site. Unfortunately, water has got into the works. We have our onboard cameras, and we have, I believe, one and possibly a second camera left to show the action with. 2 minutes, a minute and 50 now from the end. So, to recap, 88 laps completed, and Jeroen Bleekemolen with Father Michael leading in the car, Sport Holland car. Second place, Jamie Campbell-Walter and Bobby Burton-Ray. We haven't even mentioned his name so far this weekend in the number 1 Lister Storm. Third place, the champions, Belloc and Bouchou in the Labra Viper. fourth place, having just this moment passed the Viper of the Lamborghini, is the second car, Sport Holland car, Mike Hazeman's and Sebastian Bleekemolen's car. They have just gone past the Viper for that fourth place. The Viper, the Lamborghini Diablo, driven now by Peter Cox in fifth place with Oliver Gavin, who also shared the driving. Sixth overall, Thierry Perrier and Michel Neugarten's Perspective Racing Porsche, the NGT leader. Patrice Gousselin in seventh place in his GT Viper, the only remaining Belmondo car. In eighth place, Patrice Gousselin in the second of the NGT cars. That's the one you're looking at on screen at the moment, the Labra competition Porsche in its last race. They will not race in NGT next year. They'll have two Labra Vipers. That is second place in the NGT class, and third in the NGT class, having just been passed by that car a few minutes ago, Christian Pescatore and David Terrian's Ferrari, which will, David, I think, give them enough points to win the NGT Championship. You better check on that one, though.
Yes, it will. Without doubt, if they finish in third in class, more than sufficient point to give them the GT Championship. So a very bad day indeed for the Luca Riccatelli. Looking forward to a very good race here, having brought in Sasha Maschen to share with him. Unfortunately, all going very wrong at the first corner. Both team cars being involved in an accident, which was nothing to do with them to start with, but caused by somebody else completely different in the GT car. So their championship ruined completely by somebody else just at the very last minute. Pescatore, a nice third place, taking it nice and steady, some 11 seconds lap slower than the Porsches in front. But that's all he has to do. He has to nurse it along to the finish, as he has done so many times this year, so he can get it one stop less in each of these races than his Porsche counterparts.
He is having a nice cruise at the moment, isn't he? You could hear that from the onboard camera. And Bleekemolen as well, with a 36.5-second advantage last lap over Jamie Campbell-Walter, and now lapping a full 10 seconds a lap slower than Jamie, but he's got the advantage with which to do that. The father and son combination will win their first race of the year at the last gasp. Time is up. This is the last corner or two on the circuit. The man with the checkered flag and that really tasteful checkered jacket awaits. And so, although we do seem to have an awful lot of cameras working now, we see finally the checkered flag for the number 3 Car Sport Holland car. He does a big lock-up stoppie in front of the crew in celebration. Out of the final corner should come Jamie Campbell-Walter in second place, half a minute further back after 4 pit stops compared to the 2 of the Car Sport Holland car. So clearly the Lister team, who had told us that they needed wet or dry conditions and not a mixture of the two, have paid the penalty for those weather conditions. But on board with Christian Pescatore as he crosses the line, third in the NGT class, 9th overall, but he and David Terrian are the NGT champions for 2001. So congratulations indeed to them, all decided in a less than ideal satisfactory condition, as David said, with the 2 Red Bull contenders being taken out of the car by an out-of-control Belgian in a Viper through no fault of their own. But again, Pescatore and Terrian may not have racked up as many fastest laps, but they have racked up plenty of wins in that car. And they're going past them, the Nicholas Springer, Julian Bailey, Lister, 3 laps down in 10th place. So their race really came unravelled in the middle stint. Jamie Campbell-Walter and Bobby Verdenrome managed to hang on for a place on the podium in second. And Belloc and Bouchou, the GT champions, finish in third place. And so that rounds out their year nicely with another podium finish. The second Car Sport Holland car in fourth place, in the end, eased away to 25 seconds ahead of Peter Cox and Oliver Gavin. Cox's last lap of 2 minutes and 4 compared to 1 minute 54 of the Bleekemolen car in front of it and 1 minute 43 of Jamie Campbell-Walter. David, I'm suspecting that having run like a hugely fast and very impressive Lamborghini all the way through the race, in the closing stages, Cox was hobbled by one of the problems that this new car has managed to find.
I think what could have happened next, in fact, because he'd been chopping and changing tyres all the time, he was probably on the wrong tyres at the end, so he only had a minimum of 2 stops.
Well, let's catch up now with David Terrian, our NGT champion.
David,
you're third in the race, but overall you're champions. How does it feel?
It's fantastic. We couldn't finish on a better position. In fact, we just needed to score 1 point because the WTC was not was not in the points today, so it was okay for us. We did a very safe race, and we only had to stay on the track and finish on the 6th first.
You've been having a great battle with the Porsche all year. It was unlucky for Luca today. Do you have any words for Luca? Do you want to say anything to Luca, who you had a great battle with all year?
Of course, I'm sorry because he crashed, so we didn't have a real battle on the track. But it's very good for us, and I think we've been very quick on the beginning of the championship, and that's good for us to win, even if we were not that quick on the end of the championship.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, very fair assessment, I think, by David Terrien. They have certainly won races on speed and on their own merit, and they have used their strong card, their fuel economy, where they needed to when the Riccatelli and Red Bull team were really running at their strongest. They fell back on what they knew was always their strongest suit, but they have been front runners all the way through. Think to Silverstone, think to Budapest, where they won races on pace, not on fuel strategy. So the car is fast, it handles superbly, it's got great fuel mileage, looks pretty, sounds great, and it's the championship winning machine for this year. There's the overhead view of Estoril, and a very busy paddock because along with the FIA GTs, we've got the Super Productions, the Super Tourers. We've also got a couple of other support categories, Formula Chrysler here, the Formula France machines that we saw at Jarama, and another Portuguese championship. But David, no Formula Renault. We've had a couple of people asking about that. We should just point out Formula Renault's final race that decides the title is not this weekend, it's in another fortnight's time, and it's at Jarama, I think, isn't it? The Renault Europe-wide finals, which decide it's the final race of every single Renault championship in Europe, basically, and that's when that one will be decided. But there you see the results here of the Gavin and Peter Cox in 5th place, and that for that team, and particularly those two drivers, I think have had a very good drive from 35th to be 4th at one place, 1 point, and finish 5th. A really good drive, and I bet they've had a great afternoon's fun.
Yes, they have. I mean, they came here this weekend with a car they knew that had never done very much at all before, so they had to start from scratch, sort the car out. They gave the team a lot of help, saying we need to do this, we need to do that, and they've progressed terrifically up into that 5th place at the end of the day. Fantastic achievement for them.
Christian, you must have known there for the last few laps by radio that you could win the championship. How was it to drive those last few laps?
Yeah, it's very difficult race because with an intermediate tire it's very difficult to drive, but so it's very important to finish the race. It's not the good time, it's very important to finish the race, and now we are the champions, so it's incredible for me.
Thank you, Christian.
So cue Queen theme songs for them for the weekend. We are the champions, indeed, he said. And on intermediate tyres, well, I saw those waiting in the pit lane when everybody else was going on full wets, and I thought, blimey, guys, I know you're playing the economy suit and taking it easy, but on the other hand, but obviously it was the call that they needed. So just to recap, the Car Sport Holland cars then, 1st and 4th, Jamie Campbell-Walsh and Bobby Verdenrose, 2nd for Lister, 3rd, the Labra, Bouchou and Belloc car, the GT champions, take another podium to finish the year. There is the final point scoring. Riccatelli 3rd, Questa 4th. They were unable to add to their points, but Neugarten and Thierry Perrier scoring strongly again in their car, and they finish in joint 5th place in the championship. That's a really good job for what is really... I don't think they'd mind being described as gentleman drivers in a reasonably but not hugely budgeted team. Very good job by them indeed.
Mike said before the race that if you had a little bit of luck, he thought that you'd be able to win. How was it driving in the changing weather conditions?
It was difficult, especially because when we came in the first time, I was leading, and then we put on the wrong rain tires. It were the hard ones, it was no good. But yeah, Mike did a good job not to lose so many time. And then in the end, we did a good job to stay on slicks, and that was yeah, just the right decision.
Thank you, Joe.
So Jerome Bleekemolen with, as he says, everybody really scrabbling for the right answer on tyres. Here's Mike Hasemans. Let's see what he has to say for himself.
Mike, that's a great way to be finishing the season.
Yeah, exactly. We had a very difficult middle stint. There was no grip at all. But then we put on the slicks, and he said it's not, Jeroen said it's not possible, it's not possible. We said just just keep going, and then maybe if the rain stopped, then we won. So a bit lucky.
And how was it at the beginning when there was the safety car on for so long? Was it difficult to keep the concentration then?
No, that was still okay. When it was hard raining, it was still okay. I just could catch up, but the rain tires we just made on hard rain tires, and it was impossible. Still 5th gear, I had wheel spin. It was strange, I must say, but it is okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, Mike Hazemans, we saw David last night. Twan Hazemans being told no by a bouncer, and exactly how well that went down. Mike Hazemans clearly in the pits being told by Jeroen Bleekemolen that he needed to come in for pits for tyres because it was dreadful, and Mike saying stick with it. And in the end, that's what won them the race as much as anything else. Their 2 pit stops compared to the 4 of the 2nd place Lister, 3 of the 3rd place Labre Viper, and 3 for the other car, Sport Holland car in 4th place, although the Cox and Gavin Lamborghini only made 2 stops as well. They were 5th place, and Thierry Perrier and Michel Neugarten, as I said, in the Perspective Racing Porsche, 6th place overall, great result. 2 stops for them, so normal race, no panicking over tyres, and our NGT winners did a very good job in some pretty snotty conditions.
Jean-Philippe, 3rd today, but you are the champions overall. How was the year for you in general?
The season? The season was okay, but since the Le Mans 24 hour, we had some bad luck with the car, and today it's good to be back on the podium. Okay, we expect to be on the first step of the podium, but to be third is not so bad because we had a lot of problem in the race. We lose a lot of time in the beginning of the race, and after that I have smoke in the car. The radio doesn't work, and I tried to get out of the car at 7 minutes before the end, so it was very hard, but it's good to be back on the podium.
Thank you.
Well, water getting into the electrics pretty much everywhere. Again, apologies for not being able to bring you what we had hoped for. 25 minutes of live action towards the end of this race, and unfortunately it was as good an end to the race as it was to the beginning. The middle section, again, not great viewing for the spectators, but really tough times for the drivers, and with the priority for these cars to spend no more time in the pits than absolutely necessary, i.e. fuel stops only if you can get away with it. Any time you made a wrong tyre on tyres, was wrong choice on tyres, wrong call, was going to cost dear, and that, I'm afraid, is largely the fate of the Lister. In fact, the pair of Listers, and probably why as much as anything else, why the car, Sport Holland car of Jeroen Bleekemolen and Mike Hazemans finished on top of the pile. As Belloc and Boucher were saying as champions, they were pleased to get back onto the podium. They'd hoped to be on the top step, but well, they've had problems, and they've created their own problems as well with that car. But here we have the Dutch national anthem for our winners, Hazemans and Bleekemolen. So drivers on the podium are top 3, Hazemans and Bleekemolen there, and there you can see Boucher and Belloc closest to the camera. On the far side, of course, Jamie Campbell-Walter and Bobby Verdenroe. But the bad news is that result is that Jamie Campbell-Walter, according to David's arithmetic, I must say hastily, which at least has happened, unlike mine, has dropped behind Mike Hazemans in the championship. He's dropped from 4th to 5th. And he's dropped behind Hazemans to Bleekemolen, in fact. So Jamie Campbell-Walter will be now 6th place in the championship, behind Hazemans and Bleekemolen, Jeroen Bleekemolen, who are joint 4th. Championship leaders, winners, Boucher and Belloc, and Vincent Vos in... oh no, he's dropped out of it as well, because he didn't know. So in fact, Jamie stays for 5th. Yeah, all right, so anyway, he's dropped behind the 2 guys who beat him here, and that was the end of that. Vincent Vos's car didn't finish, despite having a new development V10 in it. New development V10 also in the Boucher and Belloc car. And so the new developments of the Viper engine still coming across from Caldwell Engineering in the States, the company that is also, it's been announced this weekend, selling customer examples of the Mopar V8 with which the Orica team ran their prototype at Le Mans this year. So Caldwell doing a good job for the Vipers and continuing with the Chrysler Mopar project as well. Well, we'll be back here with more from Estoril in just a moment.
The FIA GT Championship in Eurosport's Super Racing Weekend. With lease plan, fleet management in motion. Filatice, stretching fibers, fabrics and yarns.
Yokohama, power of performance.
Welcome back live to Estoril for the deciding race in the European Super Touring Championship. And David, jocks are strapping down there on the grid. That's a sight very warm to your heart, I'm sure.
Yes, it is indeed. The Scottish team Pro Motorsport from Glasgow, they got their kilts from Douglas Anderson Dumfries. He's a person who supplies kilts not only to this team here, but also to David Coulthard in Formula 1, Alan McNeish in Formula 1 with Toyota, and also Dario Franchitti, the Italian Scotsman who's racing in IndyCar in America. So very famous, and as you see, a number of the kilts looking extremely smart on that grid there.
And I'm reliably informed, nothing worn under the kilts at all. It's all in perfect working order. Thank you very much indeed. And as you saw there, Sandro Sardelli giving the V sign, the Winston Churchill style V sign in the car, because in the confusion and distractions of our highlights of the first race, we did neglect to mention that Sardelli did enough in race 1 to guarantee that he is the amateur driver champion in the Euro Super Touring Car Championship. So Sandro Sardelli has clinched the title from Gianluca Di Lorenzi, despite Gianluca Di Lorenzi's late run of scintillating form that really kicked off with double wins at the A1 ring. He's barely failed to win since, but Sardelli has clinched the championship. Meanwhile, we need to catch up with Gabriele Tarquini.
Gabriele, there's just one race to go now. The start in this race really is going to be crucial, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sure that my chance to win the championship is quite over, but I think it's a race, so everything can happen to me and also to some other drivers. I want to finish the race, I want to attack until the end of the race.
Thank you, Gabriele.
Well, David, a very downbeat Gabriele Tarquini saying that he thinks the championship is over. Having seen what happened in race 1, if it was a normal grid start with everything in qualifying order, then I would agree with him. However, as he says, anything can happen here, and with his two teammates in front controlling the pace of the race and hopefully bunching people up, I really want to see Gabriele Tarquini giving it everything.
Yvonne, just before the race, what does a driver think about? What is going through your mind just before you race?
Well, I suppose that depends of the driver. For my part, I just try to stay as much relaxed I can and to slow down the rhythm of the hard and to be not nervous, because if you are nervous you do some mistake, but sometimes we can't control. It depends.
Thank you, Yvonne.
So Ivan yesterday, Yvonne this afternoon, Yvonne Muller, and Ian Wells reckoning on the email that Yvonne Muller, one of the best talents not to make it into F1. How do we rate him, David? I think we rate him very highly indeed. As a touring car driver, he doesn't have too many peers, does he?
No, he doesn't. He's very, very good indeed. You've got to try and remember that during the winter he goes off and does ice racing, and he is one of those sort of uncatchable people in the ice racing world. having won the Andros Trophy for the last 4 years.
Well, Giovanardi, the championship leader by 13 from Gabriele Tarquini. If Tarquini wins it, though, he needs to finish top 5.
Fabrizio, it was raining earlier, but the track is drying out. Can you tell me what decision you've made about your tyres?
Yes, I think everybody starts with slick tires because 90% of the circuit is dry. I think is the choice right.
And the start will be important again in this race where you could win the championship.
Yeah, for me it's important. Don't go through the accident. I hope to finish the first lap and then I will think about the championship.
Thank you, Fabrizio.
Well, as we've mentioned, the two cars on the front row of the grid are James Thompson and Fabrice Valfish in that order. Thompson on pole, Valfish in second, because the Yas team brought them into the pits and allowed them to finish last by checking things and generally lifting bonnets and closing them a bit. Matt Neal also did much the same thing. I haven't had a chance to talk to Matt. I don't believe he had a problem. I believe they came in the hope of perhaps winning a race at the last chance this weekend. There you can see the two white cars, the Hondas on the front of the grid. Of course, the race 1 winners, it's a reverse grid, so the race 1 winner, Ivan Muller, right at the back, apart from the 2 or 3 cars that didn't finish and are still running, and in front of him are the guys who were right behind him. So it's a reversed order grid, and Giovanardi, basically, David, Giovanardi needs to stick right behind this camera car, or right with the camera car of Tarquini. As long as Tarquini's not too far away, Giovanardi's safe. But as he says, fighting your way through the traffic, as Tarquini will undoubtedly do, and Giovanardi will have to go with him if he does that, always raises the possibility of accidental contact with some of the other drivers, and that could really drastically change the championship.
Yes, it could. The championship isn't fully tied up altogether. Giovanardi does have to finish in the top 5 if Gabriele Tarquini wins this race. The Yas team have done a good job of trying to make sure that happens by having their 2 support cars on the front row of this grid to be able to try and control it from the front. So it's not all over, and as Giovanardi said, he very much has to keep out of trouble. And this, the largest grid we've had all year, with some 24 cars starting this race, 25 cars, because one of them is going to start from the pit lane, one of the Swedish Nissans there. So it's going to be very difficult. These cars have been getting quicker and quicker all year long, and we do know that the Hondas and the Alfa Romeos are in a class of their own and are very much the quickest cars out there. But they do have a lot of other cars, a lot of new cars, new Nissans from Sweden, Opel, Volvos from Sweden, and even another Audi from Sweden to try and contend with. These people, I'm sure, will try and make their life as difficult as possible. Everyone's wanted to be a winner.
Exactly right, and there is nothing that says that the drivers who start further up in this second race have to let the front runners through. There's absolutely nothing there. If you want to get by, you have to do a lot of passing. As you said, David, compared to earlier in the season where there was 15 or 16 cars, there is a lot more passing to be done. And some of these guys here, the reigning Swedish touring car champion, and a lot of the top Swedish touring car drivers here as well, are going to be a lot tougher to pass than some of the less experienced drivers, to be fair to them, that we've had in the midfield during the season. One of the advantages perhaps here is that Sardelli has tied up the championship, so there's not necessarily going to be a huge battle between him and Gianluca De Lorenzi. However, that's still going to happen. So Thompson and Valfish on the front row of the grid then, the 2 Eurosport Hondas, and I fancy James Thompson for victory in this one. Matt Neal in 3rd place, I fancy him for podium position as well, although Alberto Raidelli in the second of the Audis, or the further up the grid of the Audis, should start well. The 2 Conrero Alphas shouldn't provide too much of a problem. Max Gustafsson in the Crawford Nissan should be working his way further up the order, I think, by race 2. Nelson Clemente, late addition to the field, the Portuguese driver, and there's the other Crawford Nissan as well. And then the 2 Swedish Volvos, Jens Erdmann and Jan Flash Nilsson. Erdmann went off, as we saw earlier in the first race, and took some while to recover. Colciage should be able to barge his way through the field. Felipe Massa will run a sweeper for Larini and Giovanardi, because I think Larini could still win this if it all goes his way. Tarquini behind them, and with Ivan Muller right alongside him on that back row of the grid in front of Heinrich Semanchik. So again for Tarquini, it's all to do in a sea of red, and all his mates are up at the front. Well, that's probably the most useful place they can be for him, but it does still mean that to win this championship, Gabriele Tarquini has to do pretty much everything himself. We saw Monica Sips there on the brink of a 2nd consecutive European Super Touring title with Giovanardi. Last race will decide it. Fabrizio Giovanardi brings the car onto the grid at the tail of the field. Alongside him is Gabriele Tarquini. Right in front, Nicola Larini. Pole position, James Thompson. Outside front row on the left of picture. Drivers right on the track is Fabrice Valfish. So Thompson again with the drier left-hand side of the track, the right-hand side of the picture. You can see it's definitely a matte surface there compared to the slightly shiny surface as we see it from drivers right there with Giovanardi. So Thompson should have the lead into the first corner, but I fancy Matt Neal to go inside or around the outside of Fabrice Valfish as the lights go to green. And look at the Audi come away from the third row of the grid. That's Johansson, the Swede. He's trying to pull alongside Matt Neal as he's nearly alongside Matt Neal, but Neal gets into third. Good start by Fabrice Valfish. Probably his best and most important start of the year. Keeps Matt Neal off there because Valfish might, you never know, might end up with a win here. But Ivan Muller was inside. Gabriele Tarquini is one of the Volvos got knocked off, and I think that'll be Jan Nielsen, who was the higher placed of them and therefore further back on the grid. Giovanardi is in the middle of the BMWs and the multicoloured cars. He and Larini go through, but Tarquini has been boxed in. Tarquini boxed in. He's got Muller in front of him. Felipe Massa is in front of him as well. And Tarquini really in trouble now. Giovanardi has gone, so too has Larini, and Gabriele on the back foot. He was starting behind them anyway, but he had a lot of trouble trying to find his way safely through the first corner. And here is Tarquini. He's on the dirt there as he scrabbles around the outside of somebody. Now, Gabriele is a fighter, no doubt about it, David, and that was probably who he scrabbled around the outside of the BMW there. Don't know if that was Zadra or Eric Caroll, doesn't matter. He's safely through and no damage, it seems, to Tarquini. Giovanardi now behind one of the Nissans. Is that Sardelli? I think it might be. So Giovanardi is making practice. Tarquini, are we seeing him on his own and slowing? No, please don't say he's slowing. No, he's not. He's already jumped ahead of that little group, and that, I think, is Felipe Massa behind him. Battle goes on behind. We don't care about that. Let's get back to where Giovanardi and Tarquini are, because Matt Neal's in second place behind James Thompson. He has got past Fabrice Valfish. No, he hasn't. Thompson's made a mistake. Valfish leads, Neal second, and Thompson in third place, Johansson in fourth. Ooh, something wrong with the camera angle there, I think. We've gone on to super widescreen effect. Here we are back with Fabrice Valfish leading lap one. Matt Neal in second place and all over the back of him, David. That's a good chance for Matt now to try and make a move and take the win. As further back, Giovanardi is 10th and Tarquini 13th.
Yes, they're really mixed up in this first lap. It always happens that when they're setting off in the back, they pass a lot of cars during the first lap. And the first lap gets very, very hectic indeed. We've seen that with all of a sudden Tarquini moving around a little bit, and obviously that was the coming together with number 16, the Caroll BMW. It ended up in the barrier with a very bent looking wheel. As we can see, the As Motorsport car with Tarquini still going at a pace and looking very good. Right up there, but still boxed in with a pile of Alfa Romeos around him, and they're really making life difficult. Look at that, two abreast.
Muller right behind him.
Go anywhere.
Muller's right behind him. That's Larini immediately in front, Giovanardi in front, and that's Gustafsson, in fact, in the Crawford Nissan right in front, the 27 car. There he is. And Tarquini, Muller's coming down the inside. You see now, that's exactly what he didn't need. Larini and Giovanardi are going to do everything they can to keep him at bay. Larini can't let him through because Larini still has title aspirations if Giovanardi gets taken off there. Larini under pressure from Tarquini, makes a mistake. Tarquini goes through. That's it, done for Larini. Tarquini will not give that. Oh, unbelievable. Larini sat there with the tank-like Alfa and allowed Tarquini to go across his nose. The championship is over for Tarquini. It will be an Alfa Romeo driver that wins it, but will it be Giovanardi or will it be Larini? Tarquini's pictures show that he's bailing out of the car, and that is a dreadful disappointment for him. Well, he tried to cut back in front of Larini, and to be fair, down there, under braking into that little hairpin, David, Larini did not punt him off. He didn't give him any room, but he did not punt him off.
Larini had nowhere to go. He was sitting on the edge of the circuit, and as you said, it looked as though Tarquini tried to turn in front of him. Larini just sat there on the edge of the circuit, and Gabriele managed to wrap himself around the front of the Alfa. That's very reminiscent of the first three races at the beginning of this year when Gabriele didn't finish the first few races.
Well, I did say when we were talking at lunchtime that my feeling was that Gabriele would take every half opportunity that offered itself in traffic because he had to win the race. That was all there was to it. If he didn't make the move, he was unlikely to win the race, and if he if it went wrong, he wouldn't win the race. He had nothing to lose. It was absolutely win or bust for Gabriele, and unfortunately the Italian has not been able to fight it through to the end. However, the championship is still open, undecided, and Nicola Larini, who we ride on board with now, is the man who must and who can, because I don't believe that Nord Auto will, even in this very final race of the year, have applied team orders, as Matt Neal leads, incidentally, from James Thompson. Fabrice Valfish in the pits with the bonnet up, and clearly some engine problem. Matt Neal leads, James Thompson second, Johansson third, as we see Colciaggio going past Valley in the Alpha, in the BMW rather. Giovanardi now is in 8th place, Larini in 9th. And again, to finish my sentence, I don't think that Nord Auto will say to Larini, you must stay behind Tarquini, because both drivers can still win the race, and still win the championship. So for Larini, it's everything now in his court. He doesn't have to worry about Tarquini. He doesn't have to keep his nose clean with regards to preserving Giovanardi as a teammate. Now it's no holds barred. He's got to pass Giovanardi, and he ought to do it quickly too.
I think if he's going to win the championship, he needs to do more than pass Giovanardi. He needs Giovanardi not to finish, in actual fact. If Giovanardi finishes the position he's in now without passing another car, he will win the championship, and Larini can't do anything about it. Larini would need to win this race with Giovanardi a long way down, or preferably not to finish at all, if Larini was going to manage to take the championship away. So I'm sure Giovanardi knows that, and he'll be sitting there thinking, don't make any mistakes, don't take any risks, don't do what Gabriele Tarquini did, and just go out there and pick up the places nice and easy. By now you'd have expected him to pass that Nissan that's in front of him, one of the Swedish Crawford Nissans, but he's sat there now for well over half a lap without actually making the move.
Well, Gustafsson's no slouch, and he is defending very hard, and of course, you know, we're not talking about how much a back mark is holding up the leader. This is a battle for 7th place, and points, and all. He hasn't come all the way from Sweden just to be making the grid look attractive. You know, he's got sponsors who have paid money to see him be there, and he wants to do the very best he can, particularly because he may be thinking about coming into this championship with some other kind of car next year, and being a Swede, and the fact that we know that we've already seen testing pictures of a Volvo, there may be a Volvo around, and what better way to come and, you know, post your intentions to Volvo than by doing very well here against the top-line European opposition. The Volvo importer in Sweden may well be, or Volvo importer in Sweden, what I'm talking about, Volvo Sweden may well be interested in running some cars. Who knows, if they, for instance, have a car for whatever rules we end up with. Fabrice Valfish in the pits, we've told you about that earlier on, walking away from his car, but Giovanardi now making a move as the Nissan got held up behind the BMW of Valley, and Stefano Valley from San Marino stepping in at the last minute into that car, because Moreno Soli, who normally drives it, has got compression of the spine. He's injured himself, and so he can't drive the car. Now, this is the battle for the lead, though. That's British touring car days all over again. David, now you should put yourself in the middle of this. Matt Neal, Britain's top privateer, against James Thompson. James Thompson in the Honda he drove in last year's Touring Car Championship. These two know each other very well, and it's a British battle for the win. Hooray.
It is. They're doing very well out there. They were on the front row of the grid. They've really driven away from everybody now. They are some 6 seconds ahead of the third person, which is an Audi, and approximately 12 seconds ahead of the leading Alphas. So I can see that these two are not going to be caught by the end of the race.
Lest they take themselves off, they should be first and second. More in a moment. Estoril, the final race in the Euro STC, round 10 of the championship, the last Super Racing weekend, the last hurrah for Super Touring as we know it, the final European race. Matt Neal leads it. He's been in this championship almost all season since his British touring car deal fell apart. He joined us at Silverstone. Glad of him and his Nissan we were. Always good to see an energetic and exciting racer joining the battle. And now for the last 2 races of the year, James Thompson has come in to try and help Gabriele Tarquini win the championship. Tarquini off the road in the tyres and out of the championship hunt as a result of a clash with Nicola Larini. And here we see it again. There is Larini. Tarquini just forced him into a little error, goes down the inside, a little bit of a touch. Now, on board with Larini, watch his hands on the left-hand side, watch the little map on the steering. David Leslie was just saying in the brakes, I would love to see Larini's steering trace. Now, that means the data logging that these cars are jammed with that shows what happened with the steering wheel. And I was about to allude to that before they started the replay here and say, David, it would be great to see that data, but of course we never will, because that would tell us all we need to know about whether Tarquini made a mistake and went off across the nose of Larini by misjudging the length of his car, or as we saw quite clearly there, Larini, when Tarquini's nose was tail was alongside his nose, Larini just giving a little twitch to the right on the steering to tap Tarquini into a spin.
Yes, it's one of those things. It's not the way to finish the championship. It's the wrong way to do it. Everyone said before they started we'd try and do it cleanly. We've just seen it there in the pictures in front of us. It wasn't very clean at the end of the day. Will anyone do anything about it? I've seen this before, and I would think very unlikely, because it's the last race, and because we want to crown someone a champion, then someone will be crowned a champion. That will be Giovanardi. He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't make any mistakes. He didn't attack anyone. So he will be crowned champion. But whether Larini has an endorsement on his license or anything else that happens from that, what we looked at on the screen, a definite turn to the right-hand side, just as Tarquini was alongside him. Whether anything happens with that, I think it most unlikely.
Guilty as charged, Malat, is the simple answer there. We were postulating about when you see it at first pace, it looks as though Tarquini's come across and just not made enough room for himself. But then when you saw it, and unfortunately for Larini, although the camera was very dark as Matt Neal runs very wide, so too does James Thompson. Half chance, Neal sliding very wide. What a recovery in the Nissan. Thompson's right with him. Oh, that was dramatic stuff. Now, Matt was there, of course, with wet, muddy slurry all over the rear tyres. That's why when he came back on in the next fast little kinky slid, but David, that would have scrubbed itself back off the tyres. Heart in the mouth moment, though, for both men.
It was. In that first bit, they both went off. You've seen Matt Neal going off first and James following him onto the dirt. And then it was when they came back on next corner, that dirt from the rear made it not the grip they expected at the next corner, and getting very much a bit of a slide on there. So the two of them thinking to themselves, lucky that they're still in this race, still being first and second.
I did say that.
Planted in the barrier somewhere.
I did say unless they took themselves off, they should be first and second. And I was sort of anticipating a rash move by one or the other, not by both at the same time, with no relation to each other. Here's the battle for third, incidentally. There has been some, not attrition, but passing of the slower runners by the front-running men. Roberto Colciaggio in the Audi is in third, and Fabrizio Giovanardi is now fourth. He's got ahead of Johansson, the Swede, in the Audi, who's fifth. Marcus Gustafsson, Tobias Johansson is fifth, but Nicola Larini, championship over, I'm afraid. He's in sixth place. Hasn't got past the Audi, and now that Giovanardi has shown one way for an Alfa to get past, I guarantee that that one will be blocked to Larini. Johansson will not go for that a second time. So Larini, who needed to win and have Giovanardi drop well down the order, is not going to win this championship. It will be going to... I'm not going to say that to Giovanardi, because he may not finish yet, as we see a Nissan. Is that Gustafsson? Being pulled out of the way. I think Swedish cars, I'm not sure. I think it's probably Marcus Gustafsson being pulled out of the way, because he was quite well up and isn't any more. And the other one, the 18 car, is in the pits, or another one of the 18 car of Sandro Sardelli is in the pits. So luckily, David, he tied up, according to your arithmetic, which I do trust, the championship for the amateurs in the previous race, because they seem to be rocking it backwards and forwards, and that suggests a drivetrain problem to me. To you?
It does. It suggests something wrong with the gearbox. But just to put your mind at rest, it wasn't actually my mathematics. It was the mathematics of the championship officials.
I have to say, I do not question your mathematics at all. I question mine intimately, and anybody who's ever heard me do it on air and then immediately see the proof wrong will question it as well. Larini now does go past Johansson for fifth place behind Giovanardi, but still a little further back. And the kilts are flying as the team try and push Sardelli's car to, I'm assuming, to get it going. They're all sort of dropping off the back there as they get bored with pushing and rather run out of puff. It's all those orange wigs under the tam o' shanters, I'm sure. Can't be doing them much good. Neal and Thompson leading, and in third place, an Italian driving an Audi. Now, I must just read out this Love Your Racing Weekend, persist in pronouncing Colciago's name with an I before the O. Any of his Italian brethren last go, as in go racing. So Colciago. Yeah, that's what we say. Anyway, so it's Roberto Colciago in third place. Thank you very much, Lars Holst, Germany, by way of Denmark and the USA. And standing currently in pedant's corner as Matt Neal leads from James Thompson. No mispronunciations there, I hope. Fabrizio Giovanardi fourth, Nicola Larini fifth, Johansson in sixth place, and in seventh place in car number 3 is Ivan Muller, who after this, I should think, will be reasonably well up on certain people's shopping lists if they're looking to run a team in this championship next year, seeing as he's a fairly astute touring car driver and has proved that he can not only mix it with the best in France, the best in Britain, but also now with the best in the rest of Europe.
Yes, he's been around for a little while now driving touring cars, and he's always been very good. He's always been at the front, as you said, originally with Audi before he moved to Britain. Just completed a number of seasons. Oh, Thompson trying very hard on the outside there.
Certainly is.
I've made that mistake before. You wouldn't have thought he'd make it yet again. But going back to Ivan Muller, he's been very good. He's done a good couple of seasons with Vauxhall, finishing second to his teammate this year in the British Touring Car Championship. And with his experience of ice racing, yeah, he is someone that any number of people would be very happy to call on to say, please can you come and help sort my car and drive it for the season.
Of course, they've got to wriggle him out of a Vauxhall contract first, and that's not the easiest thing. Let's have a... Oh, no, all right, okay, they don't. All right, no. We'll carry on and have a look at James Thompson again. As you say, David, really these two drivers are holding nothing back, because the chance to win the last race of the Super Touring era, never mind the last Super Racing Weekend race or the last race of this season. Well, for Matt Neal, it's been a bit of a barren year, hasn't it? He's had flashes of front-running brilliance, but he's had more problems than he's had luck here. And to win this final race, I think, would be a fitting end to a year of support for this championship that he joined, as I said, at Silverstone. And Giovanardi still behind Colciago. Right, so it's the go bit, that's not too bad, I've got that. It's not Colciago, it's Colciago, but is it Colciago or Colciago? Is it hard C or a soft C? Don't know. Sardelli leaves the pits again as I ramble, as David sits there shaking his head. And Fabrizio Giovanardi. Now, David, I said earlier on that my opinion of Tarquini had been that basically he had to go for every half chance he was offered. As a driver, is that how you read how he should have run his race as well?
Without doubt, he had no option. The only way he could win this championship was to win this race. He had his two teammates right up front, was going to help him try and do that should he get through to the front. And that's what he was trying to do. He was trying along with the Alphas, they were in front of him, and he was overtaking them on the way through. And he had no option but to put everything into it. It was a win situation. It either worked or it didn't work. But, oh dear, we can see Giovanardi has a problem here, and he slipped right round the outside of that.
Or has he just let Nicola Larini in front, knowing that he can't get past the Audi, but Nicola Larini can't beat him in the championship the way Giovanardi is now, and he might want to let Nicola have a chance of getting on the podium, maybe as a kind of teammatey thing, or did he just balls it up?
I think he's probably just made a mess of it, to be perfectly honest. I cannot see teammates doing that to each other at any time, even when you know you've got a championship.
You see, a good Scot will do that. He'll always wade through a teammate who's helped him out in the past and let him win a race if he's been asked to nicely, and if it's an agreement between them. But I don't suppose... And this is quite some sign of how competitive this championship has been, actually. The last race of 20... and there is no team orders between the two Alpha drivers because they can both win it, and so can a third driver from another manufacturer. That's quite a competitive championship. 20 races, and it's still up for grabs into the final race.
It is. The season has got better and better as the season's gone along. It's just got so many more cars entered into it. As we said earlier, some 25 cars in this race at the start of this race. So a fantastic end to what has been quite a long and very successful era for super touring cars as we know them.
Now, I believe the drivers are on the last lap, but we haven't seen the graphic now. We have completed 11 with just 0.4 of a second between Neal and Thompson, first and second, and there's not 0.4 of a car length between them there under braking, as Matt Neal locked up heavily right in front of James Thompson. Still third place is Roberto Colciago in his Audi, and I think he will stay there despite the attempts of Larini, Muller and Giovanardi to unsettle him. Sardelli's Nissan still chuntering round. He's in the back of the shot there, but the Nissan that we are watching is that of Matt Neal. His Dynamics team have run this car in the British Championship, and now here in this European Series for the final hurrah of Super Tourists. And I'm going to say it because it is an interesting fact that I find utterly remarkable, even though the Nissan people go, no, don't say that. That car that Matt Neal is just about to win the last ever Super Touring race with, touchwood, is 5 seasons old. Or it was at Silverstone, so it's now at the end of its 5th season. And that is not bad at all. It shows you that a competitive Super Tourer, well looked after, can stay a competitive Super Tourer against the best of new machinery. And even James Thompson's car in its design, the Accord, well, certainly built for the beginning of last season, but probably design goes back another couple of years beyond that. But it is out of the final corner and onto the straight for Matt Neal, who will win this last Super Touring international race ever from James Thompson. Great Britain first and second, and Matt with the BRDC badge on the windscreen brings a little glow to David Leslie's heart as well. But for Monica Sips and for the Nord Auto team, and among them particularly, of course, for Fabrizio Giovanardi, who crosses the line in 5th place, Ivan Muller having backed off to let him through again. It is championship job well done. And I am very impressed indeed with Mrs. Sips, because she still has fingernails, God bless her. And I have to say, the other guys on the pit wall there in race 1 didn't have any fingernails left. And as she says, 2001 champion, but that's 2 championships back to back they've won with Fabrizio Giovanardi in the Euro Series. And do I think rightly that Larini is 2nd place in the points as well now after that? Yes. I think he very definitely is. So 1st and 2nd here, and last year the champion, of course, Fabrizio Giovanardi, beating out Peter Cox of Honda at the last race in, it must be said, considerably worse conditions than these in the back of Beyond. So, dramatic last weekend for the Super Tours, dramatic last race, and Giovanardi, who all year has been saying, why is everybody calling me the former champion? Why is everybody talking about Larini? Why is everybody talking about Tarquini? I'm the points leader, I'm the guy who's winning races. Finally can turn round and show, well, gentlemen, that he is at least one finger to everybody to show that he is the #1. Matt Neal, the winner then by the tiniest of margins from James Thompson, and some entertainment they put on for the crowd at the front of the field. Coltiago holding off the Alphas, who finished 4th, 5th and 6th. Larini 2nd in points. Had the disappointment indeed for him at the beginning of the year, and right up to the final race, no team orders to hold him back. But in the end, all the hard work of Giovanardi and a couple of unfortunate problems for Larini and 3 no scores for Tarquini is what decided the championship for Giovanardi. Further down, we can see the finishing order with, oh dear, way off the top 20, Sandro Sardelli, who is our amateur class, I know he's 17, our amateur class champion, 3 laps down after that pit stop where the car, for some reason, seems to refuse to work very much. He's going round there very slowly indeed. There is Sardelli, and Matt Neal alongside him, having won the race, and Sardelli, like Giovanardi, a race later, having won the championship he has been chasing all year. And the team will be very, very happy with that. Senor Sardelli was a diamond in the rough, I think it's fair to say, at the beginning of the year, and they really have worked with him, and he's been they've been so impressed with the way he's calmed down and learned and applied himself and turned into really quite a mature young driver.
Yes, he's progressed as the season's gone along, as you said. We weren't very sure at the very beginning of the year. He knew nothing about touring cars at all. He came from single-seaters, and he came in a little bit rough at the beginning, but has progressed as the season's gone along. He won his championship in the last race, and here we see the winner of the championship in this race, Fabrizio Giovanardi, holding on to that European championship he won last year.
Well, by phonetics, I've just been told that it's Coltiago. So it's a silent I, Coltiago. In 3rd place, Thompson 2nd, Neal 1st, but as we said, yes, Fabrizio Giovanardi, and a very happy, relieved, anxious, nervous, frustrated at various different points, but ultimately delighted, relieved and successful Nord Auto team the 2001 European Super Touring champions. Well, less jubilation and more intense relief sinking through his boots, I think.
Fabrizio, that's 2 years on the trot that you're the European touring car champion. How do you feel now?
What do you feel? I'm feeling really enjoying me and for all the team, because I think we're really hard championship. The Honda was fantastic, won a lot of race, but it was important to finish all the race. And today was difficult because for me to start in the back with Gabriele was hard to think.
Thank you, Fabrizio.
Well, he spent the last decade racing in touring cars. Giovanardi, a Formula 3, Formula 3000 driver before that, and has raced for Peugeot in Italy for 5 years, and then since 1995 he's been a Nordauto Alfa Romeo stalwart, and as we said, last year the European Super Touring Championship winner, and this year likewise the winner. So a very, well, I have to say emotional, and I do think relieved Fabrizio Giovanardi. It could not have been a tenser finish to the season for him, for Larini, or for Tarquini. And I'm sure Gabriele, well, he was not giving off great vibes at the beginning of the race, but he applied himself, and he certainly is not a quitter, Gabriele Tarquini. I think he and Larini acquitted themselves superbly right to the very end, taking the battle into a thrilling and involving final race. Well, let's hope that we can also catch up with our winner and our second place man, Matt Neal and James Thompson, and let you have their thoughts. Matt Neal is down with Simon Walster. Let's catch up with them now.
Matt, that's a great end to what may have been a disappointing season for you, and it was a fantastic race that you're having there with your compatriot James.
I know, it's we had a few dramas in the first race, which meant the grid favoured us in the second one, and I knew the Hondas were going to be strong, and James didn't let go right till the end. It was tough.
Was that problems with the car in the first race, or was that tactical to try and have a good starting position for the second race?
I had a few, it's pretty physical out there at certain points, and I had a few tangles, and we were worried about the suspension, so we came in to check it over. But nice to see the last Super Touring race off in Europe, period, internationally, and Nissan, our old girl, saw it off in style.
Thanks, Matt.
Cheers.
Yeah, the old girl did him proud, and well, I know he's worried about the suspension on that car. That I don't think they've ever thought the Nissan fragile until he was bounced into the pit wall by Giovanardi in Jarama, and Giovanardi's impact broke his left front suspension, and then as he hit the pit wall, the right front suspension broke as well. So yeah, he may perhaps have had a rub, well, who knows, with an Alfa, who can tell, in race one. But there you go, there's Colciago. Colciago rather, but as we heard, a great race, Matt Neal and James Thompson, and they really did keep it alive. Some edge-of-the-seat drama, lots of tail-out action, and I think we'll have a lot more of that to come, because in the super production race that follows this break, we have the title still to be decided, and lots of new entries, in addition to our regular competitors, which will help spice up the field. So that is it for Super Touring, but our Super Racing Weekend continues here live from Estoril. Join myself and David Leslie on the other side of the break for that, but we will stay and take the podium. Meanwhile, from Ireland, John Cully wants to know, given the Hondas are last year's British touring car cars, why has nobody run the faster cars from that series, like the Opels and the championship-winning Mondeos? David, any particular reason why people don't buy those cars and run them?
The Vauxhall Opels weren't very quick, and the Mondeos, which were not sold. So,
too expensive. Fast but too expensive.
Simple reason for them not to arrive over here.
Which is a bit of a shame, but there you go. Giovanardi in tears of joy. We'll be back after the break and see you for more from Estoril. Welcome back to Estoril. Super Production Championship to be decided here in this final race this weekend. Two Dutch drivers in the running, Peter Cox and Duncan Heisman. They're both BMW drivers, Cox for Team Ravaglia and Heisman for Carly Motorsport. Peter Cox, the championship leader, by just 3 points over Duncan Heisman. This one will go all the way to the checkered flag. It could still go either way. We caught up with both men at the beginning of the weekend to see how they thought about the outcome. Here's Heisman.
It's okay, as long as it's fair. and not like last time in Spain where I was pushed off by his teammate, indirect. For me it's okay. I like the fight. I like to have a hard battle, but a fair battle.
Well, in Jarama, Peter Cox and Duncan Heisman, both three-time winners, were right up at the front, but Heisman out after a first corner clash with Paulo Villamil and with Lewis Villamil and with one of the CBME BMWs. A second corner monster crash, taking out Norman Seaman and a couple of the other BMWs, the Edenbridge car there of Tom Ferrier going across the gravel. But Heisman was out, and Cox, though delayed, was able to regain the championship lead as he fought his way back up the field. So Peter Cox, who had been trailing after the last two races, took the lead back by that narrow 3-point margin.
I think we had a fantastic season, won 3 races, I was a lot on the podium, and I think the first year for Ravalia Motorsport they did a fantastic job to give me such a competitive car.
Well, they may be Dutch, they may be countrymen, but they're not necessarily friendly rivals. There's been several contretemps between the pair of them, most memorably perhaps at Magny-Cours, where Cox was heavily off into the wall.
Let's say one of my favorite type of people, and this can be, you know, you cannot be friends with everybody. And now obviously it's escalated a little bit with the racing, and for sure it's not nice. I mean, for example, I knew if I would have been driving against another driver like Van Ness, I think the problem would not be there at all. And then I think you could have a really, really good battle for a championship, as how it should be.
Sandor Van Ness, the 2001 Dutch touring car champion, another BMW driver, is actually perversely one of Heisman's team colleagues here at Estoril.
How's your relationship with Peter? Are you on speaking terms?
No, not at all.
A little wry smile from Heisman. Heisman knows that Peter Cox has got a little bit of a mental problem with him, and Heisman is apt to use that to his own advantage. He doesn't have any problem racing wheel-to-wheel with Cox. He's the new boy, Cox the championship leader from the start of the season. Heisman now with a chance of the title, and he knows that he can rattle Cox mentally as well as physically. Back live at Estoril for the final of the Super Production Championship for 2001, and this last race in our Super Racing Weekend package. Well, with all the dramas of Cox versus Heisman, let's not forget, David Leslie, Tommy Rustad, the Norwegian, in the Nissan, a car close to your heart again, on pole position, fastest man in qualifying. Alongside him is Norman Seaman, who is Peter Cox's teammate, and is on the outside of the front row of the grid. He's one of the drivers going for the under-25s trophy. So too is Toby Massini. He's in 3rd spot on the grid. Tom Coronel in 4th place. And Coronel, one of the 2 Dutch-run, or Dutch entry Carly Motorsport cars here to support Duncan Heisman, who starts in 5th place. Sander Van Ness, the Dutch champion, in 7th. Peter Cox in 8th place.
Duncan, you're here in 5th position. It's probably one of your worst qualifyings of the season, but you'll probably be happy because Peter's behind you in 8th.
Yeah, I think, well, qualifying was very close. The nice thing is it's shit to be in the 3rd row, but Norman is in front, so I don't have to watch my mirror for Norman because of Spain last time. Yeah, Peter is behind me, so that's okay.
Thank you, Duncan.
Well, as Duncan said, very close in qualifying, David Leslie. 14 cars covered in the first, second, and when you get to 6/10 down, you're still 11 cars down the grid, 6/10 from pole. That's pretty impressive, pretty close. And the newcomers, the extra BMWs and a couple of Renault Clios and so on, just adding a bit more spice to the mix. But a worrying number of them ahead of Peter Cox. Let's see what he thinks his strategy for the race might be.
Peter, you're down here in 8th position, but your teammate Norman is in 2nd. Okay, thank you, Peter.
Well, a 1-minute board being given, so Simon and everybody else will have to bail out from the grid. Tommy Rustad on pole, Norman Seaman alongside, then the Alpha of Tobias Massini in 3rd place. So 3 different manufacturers in the top 3, with Nissan, Alfa Romeo and BMW, all among those talking about next year's touring car regulations. 4th place is the Dutch car of Tom Coronel, who of course we've seen racing with Lister this year. And in 5th place, Duncan Heisman, another Dutchman of course, and another Carly Motorsport car like Coronel, although Coronel and reigning 2001 Dutch touring car champion Sander Van Ness are in red and white Marlboro. Oh, I can't say that, can I, cars? So they look different from the other Carly Motorsport cars, but are effectively their teammates. Sander van Es, the Dutch champion, in 7th place, and he took over the title, in fact, from Duncan Heisman, who was the 2000 Dutch touring car champion with Carly Motorsport BMW. So Carly having plenty of success at home and looking here to beat Roberto Ravalia's much fancied team, who started the season with Peter Cox in really fine form, running away and hiding in the first few races until we got to many call the turning point, where Heisman hit a fine vein of form and then Cox hit him and subsequently fell out of the race. That was really where Heisman's season took off, and from then it's been a cat and mouse, or in fact a dog-eat-dog war out there. It's been very, very tight indeed, and the championship with just 3 points between them, 117 for Cox, 114 for Heisman. It will have to be decided here, and let's hope that it is not decided in the unfortunate way the Super Touring title went, with one of the rivals ending up in the dirt. So cars on the warm-up lap, and David, Tommy Rustad again on pole, and again fastest by, well, not a significant margin here, but enough perhaps to allow the Nissan driver to claim another victory, I think.
Yes, he's very pleased with the way the car's going at the moment. He's really been on top for the last couple of races, having won both at Nürburgring and Jarama. So he needs to get off that line, get round the first corner and try and get himself a little bit of a gap, and then pull away, which is what he's managed to do for the last couple of races. Certainly halfway through the season, he managed to find a little bit with the Nissan Primera for Tommy, and he's made very good use of that. Extra grip, extra power, whatever it is, they managed to get on that car, but it certainly worked wonders for him. And he's now all of a sudden third in the championship, far too far away to come anywhere close to the two in front, Peter Cox and Duncan Heisman, but certainly he's out there looking for his third win in a row.
Alan Blenko, a regular on the touring car programme in Great Britain, in car 37. Gary Ailes, Alfa Romeo 156. He normally drives a Ford Fiesta, and finished, I believe, 3rd or 4th in the British Fiesta Championship, don't remember, but he's there on the grid. So too are regulars Tom Ferrier and James Hansen. So Peter Cox versus Duncan Heisman, but that battle will have to wait, because out front, Tommy Rustad leading the field round to the grid for this final super production race of the European calendar as well, because it's unlikely that super production will be a full European Championship next year. Somewhere in an amalgam of super production, super touring and other super duper saloon car rules, we should have a new outright formula for this championship next year on the Super Racing Weekend programme, and we will hopefully see BMWs and Alfa Romeos and Volvos and Nissans, and who knows, maybe cars here like the Renault Clios that have come from Holland, or a few others talking about joining the championship. And let's hope that with such a close and competitive field all the way to the end in the super production and the super touring next year, can produce at least some of the racing that we've seen this year. On board with Duncan Heisman, we have an onboard camera also with Peter Cox 3 spots further back down the grid. Heisman pulls into place. There he is, the third white car down there on the left-hand side of the grid as we look at it, and 2 rows further, or a row further back, 3 places further back on the other side of the grid is Peter Cox. So this is a high-tension moment for Cox and 2 for Heisman, because both of them need to fare well here to clinch the championship. Neither of them is in the position where they can cruise and make the other guy do all the work. And out front, Tommy Rustad looks as though he's determined to take 20 points, so the rest of them will be scrabbling for runner-up spot, which is only 15. Let's see what happens. The red lights are on, the revs rise, the man with the green flag allows the grid to be cleared for the final time, and in a moment Roland Brunserrider will throw the switch that will start this final super production championship decider. Slow away from the front row of the grid is Norman Seaman, but Tommy Rustad didn't get a great start either. Tom Coronel looked good, and Tommy Rustad touched Tobia Massini. Rustad survives as Norman Seaman hit Rustad into Tobia Massini, but and that is Peter Cox. Peter Cox on the left. Oh, no, it's Norman Seaman. Oh, Martin, calm down. Norman Seaman, thank you, David. Tommy Rustad leads then from who? Not Tom Coronel, surely, from Duncan Heisman in second place. Tom Coronel third. Peter Cox trying to come through in fourth. Then Sander Van Ness. Then the 11 car, which is the Edenbridge car of Tom Ferrier in fifth and sixth place. So Rustad leads, but Heisman is right with him. And there it was. You saw it just a little afterwards, actually. Norman Seaman leaning on Rustad, shoved Rustad into Massini, who was ahead of him, David, or half ahead. That's what spun Massini across. And hoist by his own petard there, Norman Seaman, the biter bit.
Yes, it was a bit unfortunate there, beginning taking two of the first three cars out of the race. But that's what happens in motorsport. Nothing, you can have all the plans in the world, but once that flag drops or those lights turn to green, then everything changes.
There is Peter Cox in third place, so Duncan Heisman second, Peter Cox third from eighth. He got away nicely. He's got past Tom Coronel, and he is also, in fact, Tom Coronel has been, been passed by Cox. Right behind him, he's got Tom Ferrier. Ferrier has got past Sander Van Ness in the other BMW, and so too has one of the CBME cars, and that is Gianni Morbidelli has got past Sander Van Ness. So Sander Van Ness down in seventh place. I didn't really expect that from the Dutch touring car champion. Van Ness, a very amiable young man who started in single-seaters, and I've always really rather rated him. So let's see if he can recover. And Cox really dives in hard to try and pass, but the safety car is out. So will that pass stand if he makes it? Should he be making it past a yellow flag? He was alongside, but he was not passed. Now then. There is one for Roland Brunserrider. I would not want to call that. He certainly started making the move before he got to the yellow flag and before he got to the safety car, but David, I don't know how the rules work. Are you supposed to have completed it? If you're halfway alongside, you have to back off. If you're partly the way past, does the other car have to back off? Not sure. I have a feeling they might let that one stay as it was.
I think certainly it looks as though Heisman was actually in front. Here's a replay of the start. You can see Norman Seaman bumped into Rustad. He moved over, hit Toby Massini, turned Massini round in front, and that shot him straight into Norman Seaman, who actually started the whole thing off. So Norman Seaman coming off worse there. Unfortunately, the man who came out of it very badly was Toby Massini.
And the Nissan there weaving through the back. Well, very, very impressive indeed. So Toby Massini unfortunately out of the race, and that's a shame. British fans who saw him racing with great verve in his Honda Integra R last year in the National Saloon Cup will miss him. And Rustad with a puncture. Now, I saw that black mark on the front of the car earlier, and just before the replay I was going to say, do you think there's a chance he might have got away scot-free without any damage? Obviously he has not, and that may well be why he ran wide and Heisman was able to get inside him through the last flying corner, because I don't think he would have done it normally. We're going for a break. We'll be back with more in a minute from Estoril. Under the safety car on lap 2 of the final round of the Euro SBC at Estoril, and dramas for Tommy Rustad, who lost the lead at the end of lap 1 as his damaged left front tyre let the air out and allowed Duncan Heisman to come through. He's had to do an entire lap on that tyre, but now he's been able to jump into the pits. The yellow lights are still on the safety car, and as they come past the pits, the lights are off. This will be the last lap behind the safety car. Duncan Heisman leads the race now. Patrick Cox in second place, 3 points apart in the championship. And if they finish first and second, either way round, that will decide it. So, there are 5 points for the lead, but the team now, David's emoting furiously and gesticulating. Come on, get that tyre on and off quickly. Get him out, because if he can do it now and really go like a bat out of hell, he could get onto the tail of that safety car queue. They're about a third of the way around the lap at the moment, going slowly. And this is desperately laborious stuff, David, with a handgun and those nuts. It's not a standard practice. Into the pits, incidentally, too, has come one of our newcomers. That's the number 29 dealer team Renault Clio of Franz Verschoor. And that's a long, old pit stop, unfortunately, for Tommy Rustad. But now, if he really goes hell for leather, he might just catch the back of the queue. And then we will be trying to keep you up to date from the screens of what I think will be a very exciting fight back. At the moment, no. Safety car lights off. They'll go green this time around. Heisman leads Cox. Coronel third. That's the Marlboro car, the BMW. Fourth is Ferrier. Rustad's been stopped at the end of the pit lane, and that is shocking. He's been sent back. Now he's been released. Well, that is appalling, because the pit lane exit should not be closed under a safety car for any consideration. So he's now been finally let out, but that's really put a kibosh on that. So Tom Coronel third anyway, Tom Ferrier fourth for Edenbridge, and that will greatly lift the spirits, if they needed any lifting, of Mezzanine, his main sponsors, or the team's main sponsors, who are here in force, thoroughly enjoying a holiday in Portugal. And in fifth place, Gianni Morbidelli. Sixth place, Sander Van Es. That's the second of the Marlboro cars, behind the black and orange CBME car of Morbidelli. And the driver in the safety car leaning on it a little now. Morbidelli in fifth place, Sander Van Es in sixth, Paolo Roberti in seventh, James Hansen, the other Edenbridge car, in eighth, Louis Villamil in ninth place, and in 10th place is, I'm going to say Ari Molinar, but it's not Ari Molinar as they go green again. It is Donald Molinar, I think it's probably his son, in the other Renault Clio. So, Heisman versus Cox, the final battle. It's on again, 14 laps to decide it. This is the battle for the championship. Heisman, and Cox punts him up the backside, and Heisman has time as he recovers to give Cox the finger. Heisman's in the gravel, Cox survives on the grass, and is that the championship over? In which case, Peter Cox, you should be very, very ashamed of yourself, because that was not anything other than an over-ambitious move.
No, it was very bad at that point. Yes, you've seen the getting very upset there with Duncan Heisman, getting knocked off. You could see Cox had locked himself up going into the back there, and straight into the back of Heisman and knocked him off. Cox has got going, but you have to remember that well, that's the end of it, basically.
That is the end of it. If Heisman doesn't score, Cox will win by 3 points, even if he doesn't score a point now. And that was what Heisman said, and he knew after we went to Jarama that he had to finish the race. If he said, cynically punted off, then there you go. So, Cox coming down at the restart on the brakes, just makes contact with the back right corner of Heisman, not square up behind him, but just enough to tap him into a spin. Now, you can read it either way. If you're a fan of Cox, you can say, well, he was trying to make a move and just slightly misjudged it. If you're not a fan of Cox, you can maybe give him the benefit of the doubt. Certainly, if you're in the Heisman camp, you're not likely to. Heisman, as we saw there, running back up the pit lane, and I guarantee the first door he bangs on will be marked R. Brunserrider, clerk of the course, because he is going to get his objection in nice and strongly. However, it's all over as James Hansen, Tom Ferrier rather, slides very wide over the curves. Tom Coronel is our third new race leader as he comes past the pits ahead of Gianni Morbidelli and Sander Van Es, holding off Tom Ferrier. Van Es has just got back in front of him, and look at that, weaving under braking. All right, David, you know, these cars do weave around a lot under braking. They have got production-based transmissions and brakes and everything, but still, you know, I have to say, a black flag for car, well, irrelevant, doesn't matter. Black flagging him for dangerous driving is neither here nor there. It's all done and dusted, and the cynics among us will say he's done what he needed to do, which is get it close enough to Heisman to punt him off the track. So a black flag now is irrelevant. You can't put Heisman back in the race, you can't undo the championship, and they're hardly likely, I think, David, to dock him points.
I think it's very unlikely. I don't know of any thing in the regulations actually allows them to do that, to dock them points for what can we call it, dangerous driving, driving without due care attention. It's as bad as you can possibly get. We've seen him coming down into the down the straight into the first corner. He was behind, you could see the car was weaving under the braking. If he thought he wasn't going to make it, he could have pulled out from behind Heisman and gone down the inside, trying very hard still to try and get it stopped. At least the two of them would have hit side by side, and there was a chance for the two of them to get around the corner. Okay, maybe a little bit sideways, and maybe another problem. But to hit him straight up the back, and he was certainly in line, and didn't look as though he was even trying to come away from behind him. He just hit him up the back and turned him around.
Yeah, again, the steering trace there will tell all, but certainly from what we saw, it didn't look like he was necessarily trying to make the corner. There wasn't much in the way of steering going on there. Heisman is back in the pits, and he's with the Carly team members, and I'm sure that they will try their very best to calm him down, but the 30-year-old will take a lot of calming, and I have to say, Peter Cox, when he comes into the pits, had better make darn sure that he is a long way from Duncan Heisman. He is being commiserated with by his brother in the leather jacket, Patrick Heisman, 5 times the Porsche Super Cup champion, and Patrick, fantastic. and younger brother Duncan. Well, Duncan's okay, but you can see he is hardly a happy man, and I have to say, I'm sorry, because we're completely ignoring Coronel and Morbidelli, and we really shouldn't, because they're putting on a fine battle, a really fine battle out front. Sander Van Ness also with Villemil and Ferrier, third, fourth and fifth, and they're putting on a great battle too. But a shame to see both of our touring car titles here settled by one of the rivals not finishing the race, which has been the case here. And as we saw, Gabriele Tarquini, the onboard replay, Nicola Larini not only didn't give him enough room, but actually tapped him to try and ensure that he spun off. And I'm afraid that our reading of Peter Cox's move on Duncan Heisman comes under the same thing. Not fair, not nice, not sporting. Tom Coronel leads then from Gianni Morbidelli. Sander Van Ness under pressure right behind, though, as we saw there in that last longer shot from Villemil. Now, don't forget, Massini in his Alpha was second on the grid, and Villemil has really shown the pace in that car as well on occasions, with Massini as his teammate. Although the cars are differently liveried, they are very much sharing their information. And Villemil up to fourth place, ahead of Ferrier and chasing Sander Van Ness. Tom Coronel out front, and Coronel will be mighty relieved actually that the other two Dutch drivers have gone, because he was looking forward to winning this race, and he was saying, what I'll do, I'll just pump both of them out of the way on the run down to the first corner, he joked, and then I'll win it. In actual fact, they've all been punted off, and he may yet win it. Black flag still being shown for Peter Cox, who's refusing to come in. So Cox has passed it now at least twice, and possibly a third time, and this is really stupid by Peter Cox. He comes in now, his last possible chance. I was going to say, if he goes past once more and passes the black flag for more than 3 laps, then he runs the risk of a penalty, and a penalty could include taking points away. Peter Cox in the pits as the race continues. Coronel from Morbidelli, Van Ness in third, Villemil in fourth, Ferrier in fifth, Molinar in sixth in the Renault. Good drive by him. Here's Peter Cox. Oh, look at the tiny little bit of damage on the front of the car. Extreme left front corner, didn't even crack the headlight lens, just enough to put his rival off the road. Well, Peter Cox, black flag, ignored it for a couple of laps, but wisely the Roberto Ravaglia team said, get in the pits, do not dare pass it for a third time, because then who knows what kind of sanctions could be imposed, and having seen what happened, it's just not worth risking it.
Duncan, you've had a minute now to calm down. It's a terrible way for your championship to end.
It's not a happy ending anyway. I had a very good start. Took me a flat tire, so therefore I was in front on the start-finish line on the end of lap 1 behind the safety car, because I was a nose in front, so I didn't have to back off. And at the restart, I was safe for a few meters. I was on the brakes, and Peter just on the last moment he went to the left to push me off, and he did it. I don't know the right word. I think on purpose, but. It's a shame. A good season. Last 4 races I've been pushed off 3 times by the Ravaglia Motorsport team, and I think my team, the Carly Motorsport team, did a really great job. We had a superb car, and hopefully we'll be back next year.
Thank you, Duncan.
Well, Heisman is right. He has done a superb job. First, second or third in every race he's finished, and as he said, well, shoved off, and despite that at the Nürburgring took second place anyway. He saw Roberto Ravaglia there in the pits with Peter Cox, and clearly they will have a very different view. But as Heisman said, and we saw there in replay as he was saying it, he said Cox moved back over to the left to make contact, and you could clearly see the car turning to the left slightly enough to make contact with the back of the BMW. Coronel then from Morbidelli, and for Morbidelli this is a chance, because the CBME cars were frankly really midfield runners at the beginning of the year, struggling desperately, and only since they've been able to secure a Carly Motorsport engine supply like the Carly cars, like the Ravaglia cars, have they been able to work themselves up to the front. And a win at the last gasp for Morbidelli and for the team would be a big fillip. But as we said earlier, Tom Coronel will be really happy to win this one. And Tom Ferrier, well, looking for maybe a chance at the podium. He's in 5th place at the moment, chasing Van Ness and Villemil, and there's certainly no guarantees that all these cars will finish the race in front of him. So a chance perhaps for him to score his best result of the season. James Hansen was 3rd last time out at Harama, despite a lurid gravel trapping moment or two for the drivers in the first couple of laps, avoiding other people's problems. But Hansen, I'm afraid, 4 laps down now with 7 run, and James having a disastrous weekend, equally as Tom is having a good one here. So mixed fortunes there very much for those pair. But Tom Coronel coming out of the last corner and onto the straight again to complete lap 8. Down in the Ravaglia pits is Peter Cox. Let's hear his side of the story.
Peter, you received a black flag for the incident with Duncan. Do you think it was worth the black flag?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I just tried to overtake, and you know, we had a pace car situation, the tires were cold a little bit, and there was one dry line, and Duncan obviously tried to trick me a little bit with the pace car, but I think I was switched on enough. I have Tom Coronel behind me, and I just had a good run on him, and I took the opportunity. I mean, in the end, I'm a racing driver, you know, and you can see, I think, from the camera that I go out, you know, I go out, and then I realize, you know, this wet, and I cannot hold the car, so, you know, and then I hit them on the side, and I think it's just racing, and it's absolutely not, I mean, I think we have seen much more harsher things this year, and to give me that now, obviously maybe it's the last race, to give me a black flag for this, I find this a little bit, you know, a bit crazy. I mean, we're fighting for the championship. I mean, you know, we do the start of the race, and immediately a Marlboro car is trying to hold me off and to block me. So, you know, I mean, I have to take every opportunity that I can take to overtake. And for me, you know, it's just a racing accident.
Well done for winning the championship. Thanks, Peter.
So, 2 drivers, 1 accident, 2 stories. David.
Yes, but as he said, he was trying to overtake, but how can you overtake when you're actually behind somebody? You've got to move out from behind them to be beside them in order to try and overtake. You can't overtake by running into the back of them. Well,
yeah, I would again like him to repeat those words as he watches the tape. He said, I moved to the inside to try and overtake, then I realised I wasn't going to make it through. The words he omitted were, then I turned left and hit the back of Duncan Heisman's car. So here's yes. So, however, good battle going on behind here. Tom Ferrier again fighting with Louis Villamil, and he is squabbling there very strongly indeed. Ferrier got his nose in front for 4th place. Villamil fighting back there, who was in 4th as they came across the line last time. And as they come across the line this time, easing away Tom Coronel, and Gianni Morbidelli nearly a second behind him now. Sander Van Ness in 3rd, Villamil, Ferrier and Molinar in the Renault there in front of Ferrier now. So Molinar making a great move under braking. First time we've seen the Renault Clios in this championship. They've been running in Holland all year. As you can see, very nicely prepared, very well sponsored, well, not very, yes, well sponsored, well liveried up, nice looking cars and running very strongly indeed. And Molinar in that Renault Clio from, where was he on the grid? Oh yeah, on row 6 of the grid. That's not bad at all. Dives inside Tom Ferrier. And in these tricky conditions, maybe the front-wheel drive cars, David, with all the heat being generated in those front tyres, just having a little bit more under braking than the BMWs. BMWs tend to fare less well. Certainly Super Tourers have always done so. The colder it gets, the less front end they have. And with the rain earlier on and the breeze, it's still not very warm here. So perhaps that's starting to harm Tom Ferrier. Having said that, of course, the first 3 cars are still BMWs, so I may be talking out of my hat.
It's just a case of what you've got to work with at the time, and I don't know what they've done to little Renault between qualifying and the race, but whatever it's done, it certainly worked, and they've managed to climb themselves up from 12th on the grid to 6th at this moment in time. So they're having a terrific race compared to their qualifying. On the other hand, Tommy Rustad's having a terrible race, having had that puncture early on. So he did get back out eventually onto the grid, but a long way down, so he wasn't on the back of the queue when he restarted the race. But he is going round at the moment. He's got the fastest lap of the race. It's approximately 1 second faster than everybody else, and his last lap around about 7/10 of a second faster than everybody else out there. So he's definitely the fastest man, but unfortunately being all the way down in 14th place and some 54 seconds behind the leader, he's not going to make very big inroads.
No, he's not. He's in 14th. Alan Blanco in front of him in 13th, and Alan's last lap was at 4.7 seconds slower than Tommy's. So no disrespect to Alan at all, but Tommy Rustad, a very fired up Norwegian indeed, and he is really piling on the pressure, so he's probably a couple of laps from being on the back of Alan Blenko, but this battle continues. The Renault having a bit of a mixed time actually, because although Molinar's going very well indeed, of course we saw Franz Verschoor pulling off at the end of the first lap, at the end of the fourth lap rather, into the pits, and so his car has stopped. And yeah, I like the look of this little Renault. Actually, it's really nice just to see different shapes and sounds and so on. You know, we've got it in the GTs and in the NGT category, we've got it in the Super Touring and the Super Production. Lots of variety, lots of different looks, lots of different teams running the car, so you don't get all the BMWs looking the same and all the Alphas looking the same and so on. And really, really looking forward to seeing what kind of formula they come up with next year. I hope it's not too radical, I hope it's not too ridiculous, because everybody's looking very worriedly at next year in terms of reduced revenues for everything, and the offshoot of September the 11th terrorist outrages very much colouring people's view of next year's financial strategies that have already probably been put in place and laid down and now all being dragged back and reviewed. So I'm hoping for something that's close to super production, and maybe with more power from the engines, but certainly something that's not ludicrously expensive and will encourage manufacturers to sort of sit and wait a year or two, because with the momentum that these two championships have built up on the super racing weekends, there's an awful lot of interest in next year's super racing weekend, touring car, saloon car, call it what you like, racing, and I really want to see some sensible rule decisions, and maybe, who knows, maybe half a dozen manufacturers, different cars out on the first grid of the year.
I think, well, I know that during this coming week, the manufacturers are all getting together to talk, to see what they can do to try and get as many people as possible onto this grid for next year. Remember, they're going to try and amalgamate these two championships we've been watching here today, the Super Touring Championship, which is now finished, and the Super Production Championship, which we've seen here this year for the first time in European guys for the European Championship. And as we've said all along, this weekend has been terrific, because we've got so many more people come along into the championship. Here we're watching little Renault, who's currently in 5th place, trying to get up there. And I think if he could just get past that little Alpha of Louis Villemille, then he'll set off in chase of the lead BMWs.
Yeah, that would be fun to see a newcomer get onto the podium. Would give credence to the fact that when you get a Europe-wide set of regulations, you don't always necessarily have the cream of the crop in the European Championship. You can get guys who are good at what they do, developing under fancied cars, and let's be honest, this is, you know, a car that's only raced in Holland, been developed in Holland, and without much wider experience, doing very well here against better developed and better supported cars, particularly the BMWs, rather than necessarily the Alpha, which is kind of, they're going their own way with the Alphas and doing a good job with it too. So you can get smaller, less well-funded privateer teams running less fancied equipment that can come out and put a good drive and a good team together with, you know, a good engineer to develop the car, and you can really have a fun runner.
That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make the championship more affordable for everyone. We've seen in the past year Super Touring, when it gets involved with the manufacturers, they spend many millions of pounds going racing, which is fine for a while, but eventually manufacturers think, you know, can we afford to spend this amount of money? And the short answer was, at the end of the day, it was no. So this is why it's coming to an end, and we now have to have some new regulations that are much more sensible and much more cost effective. Motorsport is the same as every other business around the world. It revolves around the amount of money able to do it, and everyone looking to tighten their belts to make it a little bit more accessible for people to come and do things, and therefore you've got to be able to bring the price down, and Super Production has certainly done that, and they're trying to base, I would think, next year's championship, Super 2000 they're going to call it, very much around these Super Production cars, rather than the Super Touring, the more costly Super Touring cars we've seen earlier in the day.
Yeah, nobody wants cheap, and nobody wants cars that look like they're cheap, but they all want cost-effective, and that is the key to the whole thing, isn't it? And if somebody is angling for a sort of DTM-style super-duper-dupers, then I think they will find themselves in a class of one, because most manufacturers, as we've said, are looking towards a variety, a variation of this, perhaps with a slightly more racy-looking tyres rather than the very production-looking tyres that they run at the moment, maybe with a bit more power, just to Well, actually, I have to say, with these tyres and a Super Touring engine, all right, the drivers would hate it, because after 5 laps of fun, it would suddenly start to be a real handful, but the fans would love it. Like Sander van Est there in 3rd place in his BMW, sliding it through a 125-mile-an-hour exit corner. That's what we want to see. We want to see cars all over the road. And these cars, are with their production brakes, David, and we did say this, you know, right from the very start, down into the first corner there, they're weaving around under braking. I mean, they look hard to handle. And as a fan, rather than as a driver or an engineer or anything else, I always think racing looks best when cars are obviously hard to handle, because then you sit in your armchair and you go, wow, and you think, although I've got a BMW or a Ford or whatever it is, I could never do that. When they go round on rails, everybody goes, oh yeah, well, you know, I can drive Toka touring cars on my PlayStation, and this is the same, I could do that.
It's the Super Touring was like that because it had so much grip and so much power. It looked very much as though you're on rails. It felt that way when you were driving them. These cars, I drove one of these cars earlier this year, and they're very different. These cars are very much slipping and sliding around, as we're watching right this very minute.
Fantastic.
The 3rd place car there, slipping and sliding around. So it's much better to have that. It's much better to watch when you're watching it, because something is happening. You're not just watching somebody go round a corner on rails like some of the very high-speed single-seater cars do. But in actual fact, you're getting to see the driver working very hard, having to control oversteer, and you're getting, with smaller brakes, you have a much longer braking distance. If you've got a longer braking distance, you've got much more opportunity to try and have an overtaking manoeuvre. And the more overtaking manoeuvres you have, the much more interesting the racing is. So that's why things like Super Touring we've seen today, and production cars here now, when you see that overtaking, you've got something actually happening, rather than watching, I don't know, say something like Formula 1, which once the work is done in qualifying, then they all go out and follow each other unless somebody makes a mistake in the pit stops.
Jonathan Palmer's great explanation of Formula 1 I always go back to. He said, imagine explaining modern Formula 1 to a Martian. You get a whole bunch of cars and drivers, you spend 2 days finding out which one's fastest, and then you spend 2 hours watching them all spread out. That's pretty much the way it goes, isn't it? So this is at least a variation on that, because Gianni Morbidelli here, he thinks he can win this one, and Tom Coronel thinks he can win this one too. Sander van Est might not at the moment, but I bet he reckons there's going to be a last lap dust-up between those two, and I don't think he's far wrong. And still, Villemil and Molinard sorting out 4th and 5th between them. Unfortunately, whoa, and Molinard's making the move here. Villemil's got the inside line again, but Molinard really pushing very hard now. 14 laps completed there on 15, and Molinard knows that time is running out for him. I think he sized up Villemil, and ooh, that was close. Villemil making a mistake, and Molinard right with him. So the leader, Tom Coronel, with a half-second gap over Gianni Morbidelli at the line. It's a little less around the back, and Coronel sliding a little less, keeping it a little neater than his teammate Sander van Est there in 3rd place. Lewis Villemil in 4th, and Donald Molinard in 5th spot in his Renault. So we have got 3 different manufacturers in the top 5 positions, BMW and Alfa Romeo and Renault. But I think Coronel will take some unseating here. Gianni Morbidelli will have to close his eyes from a long way back and aim at the curve on the inside of the first turn as they get down the straight, because I don't think he's going to get too many other opportunities. Villemil recovers from that little nudge and stays ahead of Molinard. There's Tom on his own in the Edenbridge car, Tom Ferrier. Oh, he's enjoying his last couple of laps of the season, isn't he? Look at that. That was gratuitous, David. No need for that other than it was fun.
It was just 4 great big black tyre marks left on the circuit. More rubber gone off the tyres just to make it even more slippy to drive for the last couple of laps when it gets round to it. But yeah, they're out there having fun. These cars do look superb when you watch them on the circuit. They do slip and slide around. It is close racing, as we said before we started, with all these cars, the top 12 cars within 1 second on the grid. And it was just absolutely terrific. All out there, very close. There's a bit of a pity about the accidents at the very beginning, where 2 cars were taken out before the first corner, and then the 2 championship contenders managed to be taken out at the start of the restart after the safety car. So that was a bit unfortunate. We lost those 4 people, and Tommy Rustad with the Nissan having his puncture. That was 5 cars gone from the front. But even with 5 cars gone out of the front, we still have this fight here for first between Tom Cornell, new to the championship, in a Carley Motorsport car. This is a car they've been racing back home. It's the first time they've brought it to the European Championship. It's just the same as their own cars they've been racing with Duncan Heisman, etc. So they're right up there. They've got first and third place with the two new guys. But Gianni Morbidelli, he's been around a long time. He's been all the way to Formula 1 and back again. Now he's in this, and he sees this as a future. He's been in Super Touring cars as well, and he's seen this as a way forward, knowing that Super Touring cars was due to finish at the end of this year. And he's finished second once already this season, and I'm pretty sure he's out there. He would like to have that win before the end. He hasn't got very long left to do it, about
no,
a lap and a half, but he won't give up. I know Gianni, he's a little fiery Italian gentleman, and he'll just keep on going right to the very end.
Yeah, he, like Cox, was in the Super Tours last year in the European Championship course, and as you said, yeah, he and CBME have decided that BMW's Super Tourer was not available. They wanted to stay with BMW. CBME had long been a BMW supporter, and look at that battle behind as Villamil desperately wheezes to hold off Molinar onto the last lap. Coronel from Morbidelli by one car length, if that, as Coronel got a big slide going in there. Morbidelli in second place, as we said, with the CBME team staying with their BMWs, the cars they love, the factory they've worked so long with in the super production, and a learning year definitely, but to finish it with a win would be great for them. Sander Van Ness in third, Villamil fourth, across the line ahead of Molinar. We'll have to try and hold some long shots. I'd love the director to be able to hear us or occasionally pay attention to us, but they have a little strategy of their own, undoubtedly, that they probably won't explain to us. But Morbidelli, well, he is the leader. No, he is not the leader, the regular here, chasing leader Coronel, so we're staying with that battle. And Villamil and Molinar for fourth place will have to take its turn. Morbidelli down, right up behind him under braking, but I think that might have been his last chance if he could got to the inside there or fought him. I don't think he'll be able to. Oh, he is. He's looking down the inside now. That's a tough one. Oh, and Sander Van Ness has a chance now as Tom Coronel's pumped it off. Gianni Morbidelli will be slow into this right-hander, David, and Sander Van Ness right with him. Well, let's have a look. He didn't go and try and hit him. He dived to the inside, but it is a tight corner there, and it goes down, and it does help you on the inside, but he was very, very late in alongside Tom Coronel.
He was trying very hard. You see, locked the brakes up as he went in, but he tried very desperately to try and miss Tom, but couldn't do that, and managed to catch his door and turn him around. If that had happened between Peter Cox and Duncan Heisman, they would still have both been racing. But that wasn't what happened there. And as I said, Gianni was desperately trying to get this first win of the season. Here he is.
Checkered flag awaits, and he's going to take it by half a car length from Sander Van Ness. Gianni Morbidelli, not even that. Sander Van Ness pulls out of the line, but Gianni Morbidelli does win his first and only race of the season at the last gasp. Sander Van Ness in second place, Tom Coronel in third, and Donald Molinar taking fourth place at the line ahead of Lewis Villamil, Tom Ferrier in sixth place, and undoubtedly sideways and on the lock stops all the way around the last lap. Battles going all the way down the field. Pegan Anderson comes across the line in eighth, 1/10 of a second ahead of Paolo Ruberti in another of the CBME cars. But as you said, David, that was a genuine and honest attempt to make a clean overtaking manoeuvre on the last lap for the lead of the race. And Morbidelli, just in the end, could not control it. And I have to say, although Tom will be aggrieved at that initially from having been spun out, if he sits down and watches the video, he'll say, all right, well, I don't think that was a cynical move. And as you said, if Peter Cox had managed to turn in inside Heisman even too quickly, then they may well have both been still in the race after that restart incident, and who knows how it would have finished. But Morbidelli wins, and for the CBME team, that will be a big relief. That is a good result for them. Van Ness and Coronel, just visitors for the weekend, and second and third. Well, you could ask for more than that, and Tom will feel disappointed he didn't get more than that, but that's still pretty good indeed. Molinar, Villamil, Ferrier, then Gabellini, Stefano Gabellini. Didn't really talk very much about him because he was sort of in that nether region between the front and the middle. Stefano Gabellini, he is Gianni Morbidelli's teammate at CBME. He was in seventh place. Pegan Anderson in the Carley Motorsport car in eighth, ahead of Paolo Ruberti, the third CBME car making the finish. I'm not sure there's been too many races where all three CBME cars have actually got to the finish, so that's good too. Not only have they won the race, but there's not an awful lot of work for the mechanics to do to start the cars up. And De Luca in 10th place in his BMW. I beg your pardon, Semenya Luca in his Nissan Primera, ahead of Tommy Rustad, his teammate in the other Nissan, in 11th. The Belgian driver, Bellion, in the third Carly Motorsport car, the third regular Carly Motorsport car, in 12th place, and Alan Blenko, last of the drivers, still running at the end in, unhappy for him, 13th position. But Alan Blenko at least getting to the end of his first ever European Super Production race in his Alfa. So there's the championship then. 3 points it was coming in. Exactly, Peter Cox and Heisman finishing as they started. Tommy Rustad was very much secure in third and stays there. And so that is the top three in the championship. And James Hansen, Tom Ferrier closing to just 2 points behind his teammate at the end of the year. So I'd have to say that's a pretty even result for them. Hansen having the best result for the team of the year, third place last time out. And Tom Ferrier having pretty much, I think, equaling his best race here. I may possibly be wrong because my brain's not working too well. He had 8 points before at Budapest. I think he was he 5th or 6th at Budapest? I think he might be 6th at Budapest. So I think equaling his best result. But there you go. Stefano, I'm going to say Gabellini, I don't mean that, I mean Gianni Morbidelli steps out of the car, and there will be another emotion Italian. Look at him. He's not leaping up and down and waving. He's close to tears there, I think, of delight. Good job, Gianni. Nice guy, Morbidelli, and a gentleman in every sense of the word when he's driving his race car as well. He's not the type to deliberately take out the drivers out of the race, and a good move on the last lap, David. I mean, he had half a chance, took it, and so he wins the last race of the year. So that's it, all bar the shouting, and I should think there'll be a little degree of that in the motorsport press next week. So the Super Racing Weekend does return in 2002. I got my scruffy bit of paper out of my pocket. I was going to tell you the calendar. We start in Spain 21st of April, then, well, reputed date at the pre-qualifying weekend, same weekend at Silverstone in May, but from April through to October, when we'll finish up in Magny-Cours after the penultimate race in Estoril next year. We've got a wide range of tracks and hopefully plenty more racing. Meanwhile, from me, Martin Haven, and from David Leslie, thank you very much for staying with us.
The Eurosport Super Racing Weekend.
Yokohama, power of performance.
With lawn comfort, garden furniture.